please stand with us and we'll say the pledge.
Liberty, justice.
Several of our members are on the phone. Mr. Peck Run, Mr. Williamson.
Yes.
I
Yes,
was
ma'am.
telling the people who are on the phone, Ms. McFettridge and Dr. Hill and Ms. Chambers had a conflict. So you will be getting a full board hearing even though you only see just a few people here. Okay, let's see. All of the people who are serving on the board are appointed and are volunteers. All of the people that you see in front of you have taught at one time or another. The others are either an attorney, a banking professional, and a business professional. So we have a diverse group who understands children and their needs, and so our objective today will be conduct a fair, responsible, and orderly hearing. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Ms. Zook, my name is Lenise Field, and I'm also online. I'm a parent.
Okay, if you will, if you will put yourself on mute, and then you will be able to better hear us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any changes to the agenda? Okay, thank you. I also failed to acknowledge that we have Sharon Hill, who will be doing a transcript of the meeting, Tiffany Donovan, who keeps the minutes, and Dan Davis, who does the live streaming. So when you come to the microphone, if you will, please state your full name and speak into the microphone so that the viewing public can hear what you have to say. First on the agenda is Capital City Lighthouse. Ms. Webb.
Good morning, Tracy Webb, Charter Unit Coordinator. On December 18th, 2019, representatives of Capital City Lighthouse appeared before the Charter Authorizing Panel requesting a renewal of their charter. By unanimous vote, the panel approved the request. On January 9th, 2020, the State Board of Education voted to review the panel's decision and request specific information regarding the school counselor waiver. Superintendent Lenisha Roberts is here to present, but before she does, Ms. Hyatt is going to review the hearing procedures with you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mary Claire Hyatt with the division. Briefly, I'll go over the procedures for the hearing, and then after the hearing's over, if you've got questions about what you can and can't do, we'll review that separately. All persons, with the exceptions of attorneys representing the parties, and this is the same hearing procedure for the second item as well, who plan to provide testimony or speak during the hearing must be sworn in by the chair. They will have 20 minutes to present the information that you requested and any additional information submitted. The chair may grant additional time if it's necessary. Following their presentation, you may ask questions to the charter, to the division. I know for the second hearing, you requested information from the division. You can recognize us following that presentation, have discussion, and then may issue a final decision at the end of the hearing.
Okay, thank you. Will all of those who plan to give testimony on the Capital City Lighthouse letter please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Okay, you may come to the microphone.
Good morning, Lenisha Roberts, Superintendent. So So I know that when we left last time, there were some questions about the 90-10. We did go back and review more in depth of Act 190. And honestly, we are more in line, as Ms. Newton said, with the 90-10 probably than most schools, because we've been doing that type of work. So what we really looked at was more in depth, like what are the actual parts of this this actual act that may become just serve as some conflict, and that would be like limiting us to that time, because we're such a small campus. We have like 8 classrooms. Some of our teachers may teach literacy and may teach PE. Those kids are in different groups, and when he's doing community meetings and those restorative groups with the classrooms, we could easily exceed the 10 sessions per week, and sometimes the 3 in a day could be 5 or 6. So that is the portion that we see that may become a conflict, just to make sure that we stay in line with Act 190.
Okay.
I'm good with that. Good.
Okay, I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And you may or may not know, what was the rationale behind limiting the number of times a counselor could meet with a class?
I'm not for sure, but in here when it talks about the direct services,
Right.
it pretty much says that, 3 times. I'm not for sure the complete rationale, but we
Right.
don't want to limit that, because he's
No.
needed more than not in those classrooms to help
Right.
support teachers and those students. And just, after he's dealing with and looking at the data about like what are some consistent things we're seeing, just making sure we're addressing those immediately. So we just definitely don't want to limit him to that space.
Is the person that will be doing this a licensed elementary or secondary school counselor?
No, ma'am. He is a culture coordinator, and he receives training, and he strictly focuses on students, student culture, trauma, whether it's bullying. I mean, we do a lot of in-depth training with them just to focus on that social and emotional piece, and that's the big thing about us with restorative and everything, and with the families. So he gets a lot of, Lighthouse does that training anyway, but he's not licensed, so we want to keep our waiver with the counselor.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have a motion or comments or?
Is it a motion to, how would we state that motion? Would it be a motion to approve with the changes in the amendment request? Help me frame my motion, Ms. Height.
Mary Claire Hyatt with the division. I think the easiest way to do it would be to approve the rescission of 6/18/2004 and approve the waiver of 6/18/2002 2A.
Do we need 2 different motions?
You can do it in one.
Okay.
All right, I approve the rescission of 6/18/204, and then approve the addition of the amendment of 6/18/2002 2A.
Everybody understand the motion? Do I have a second?
Can I chime in for a second?
Okay. I have a motion by Ms. Newton, a second by Ms. Dean. I guess we better take roll call.
Somebody had a question.
Mr. Peck Run, did you have a question?
Yes, I would like to suggest a friendly amendment to the motion. When we met last time, I had asked the charter if they would be willing to come in and make annual report, and they said they would. And I know they agreed to do it voluntarily, but since we are doing a formal motion anyway, I'd like to have that added as part of the.
Okay, could you restate it and get closer a little to the microphone? I'm having trouble hearing you.
I'm sorry,
Mrs. Hyatt is about to address your.
Mr. Peck Run, I think it would be best if we did that in a separate motion, since it's not related to the waiver. There's nothing that prohibits you from making an additional motion as part of the review. So if you want to take care of the waiver issue first and then make a separate motion, I think that would be cleaner.
And that's fine, and as long as they're still willing to appear voluntarily on an annual basis with reports, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
How often are you wanting them to report, or when, I guess?
Annually.
Annually, okay.
Any other discussion? Roll call, so since we have, it'll be hard. Well, let me see if I have any no's, okay? All in favor of the motion as stated?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. You may be excused if you want to.
Well, you got one more motion Chad was gonna make.
Okay, sorry. Help me. Okay, Mr. Peck Run, can you give us your motion?
Oh, no, I said as long as they're willing, to come voluntarily, which they agreed to do. I don't need to make a separate motion.
I can't hear.
Are you
If I may,
saying?
He said as long as they are willing to come and
Yes.
she has expressed a willingness to come and report. He said, I think he's saying there's no need for an official action by the board that will accept their willingness to come.
Okay, would you come to the microphone and say yes? Because I know we're negotiating a contract here.
Lanisha Roberts, Superintendent, yes, we are willing to come and give an annual report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your help.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Newton. All right. Our next item on the agenda is Southeast Arkansas Preparatory Academy. And Ms. Webb, if you will.
Tracy Webb, Charter Unit Coordinator. On December 18th, 2019, representatives of Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School appeared before the charter authorizing panel for a review of their charter. By unanimous vote, the panel voted to revoke the charter. On January 9th, 2020, the State Board of Education voted to review the charter panel's decision. Today, we have Superintendent Jeremy Seegers, Kensel Branch, the LEA Supervisor, representatives from APSRC, and Representative Ferguson here to speak on behalf of Southeast Arkansas Prep.
Okay, thank you. Would all of those of you who will be giving testimony please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You did have verbal yeses over here? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. You may start.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to thank Commissioner Key and each member of the Arkansas State Board of Education represented here today. I also would like to thank the numerous ADE staff members that have worked with us on various reports, assisted us with numerous deadlines, and provided criticism, whether positive or constructive. We acknowledge that everything has not been perfect at Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School, but on behalf of the wonderful student body, our dedicated parents, the working faculty and staff, our tireless board members, and numerous supporters in the Pine Bluff community, I stand to discuss the past, shed light on the present, and reveal the marvelous future for Southeast Preparatory High School. Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School received an ESSA score of an F from the 2018-2019 school term. This is not something that was taken lightly. While we understand that two other high schools in Jefferson County also received a score of an F, and the other two scored a D and a C, we adamantly accept the challenge to change things. One of the major components considered in ESSA is scoring in ESSA is the 9th and 10th grade ACT Aspire. When I arrived in July as the administrator, I discovered that the interim ACT Aspire was not being given to our students. Taking the ACT Aspire interim assessment provides many opportunities for data disaggregation, decreasing the deficit areas, and simply gaining familiarity with the assessment prior to taking a high-stakes test at the end of the year. Not taking ACT Aspire or practice ACT potentially decreases our students' chances of entering colleges with scholarships. We noticed the need for an adjustment, and it was immediately done. We do not only focus on academics at Southeast Arkansas Prep, we focus on the entire learner. It isn't fair to expect a scholar to learn and they can't even understand what they are feeling. For these situations, we employ the PATH Center to come and provide one-on-one counseling for our scholars. These are simply examples of us seeing a need and creating an adjustment to provide for our students. We also understand that growing up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas can be an intimidating place from time to time. Our students hear the negative reports from news outlets. Our students see violence in various places. Our students can be highly defensive because of what they've grown accustomed to on social media. At Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School, we focus on preventative measures. Oftentimes, violence takes place because of two things: lack of the ability to communicate and the lack of an ability to process one's feelings. We focus on strengthening both of these areas by having weekly sessions with Reform Incorporated. An SAPHS student has the ability to perform and be able to diffuse situations before they escalate out of control. There isn't a rubric for this, but we are extremely proud of this fact. Another thing that we are extremely proud of is the fact that at SAPHS, we have a great quality of internships. Our qualified seniors have the opportunity to go out and intern with a variety of businesses that are partnered with the school. This allows for businesses to be able to work with our students and be able to form relationships prior to college. This experience is invaluable to our students, and it also provides local businesses with work needed to be done. Through our internships, we allow for students to gain experience and exposure that they would not gain inside of the traditional classroom. We saw a need for positive change, and we made the adjustment. Two other mentorships that we have at Southeast Arkansas Prep are the UAPB ladies basketball team. They have come out and walked scholars to class, held numerous conversations with them, provided opportunities to show our young ladies that dreaming is acceptable, and bridge the gap between our scholars and college students. We try to show our students that even though these ladies go out and perform in front of thousands of people, their backgrounds are similar to theirs. Now I'm going to allow Mrs. Branch to come and speak on behalf of Compensatory Services.
Good morning, Kensel Branch, Southeast Arkansas Preparatory LEA Coordinator. There were some questions about our compensatory services. We are aware that our students did not receive special education services for the 2018-2019 school year. We're also aware that they did not receive services for the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year from about August 13th to October 4th. We have offered and are providing compensatory services for our special education students who did not receive those services. Those parents and students were given the option to receive compensatory services after school, either Monday or Wednesday from 4 to 6, or Tuesday, Thursday from 4 to 6. We have parents and students who did take us up on that offer, and we are providing excuse me, those services. The lessons that are delivered to those students are constructed on an individual basis. I've used their IEP goals from last year that were not mastered, and also the goals from this year they've shown regression, and I've created lesson plans for those individual students, and that's how we are servicing our students to make sure we fill in those gaps. We determined their deficits by using the ACT Aspire assessment data, classroom data, and we also administered and collected data from the Brigant's Comprehensive Skills 2 test for math and literacy. We'll provide these services to our students until their deficits are filled or until they've mastered those goals that we've missed. As far as our finances for compensatory services, we've allotted $3,000 a month into our budget for compensatory services. That gives us 10 hours a week for $40 an hour, which equals $1,600 a month for a certified special education teacher to provide those services after school. Those funds have been set aside to purchase various items and to also pay that staff. We've also contracted progressive therapy for our speech, language, and OT, physical therapy, and we're billing Medicaid directly for those services. For those related services, we have a layout of how much approximately that will cost us per week, per month, until the end of the year. Those services, this is just an estimate of what we will have to pay, and that's including compensatory services through the end of the year. We've also contracted with Pine Bluff Psychological to provide those psychological evaluations for those students who were missed last year. So far this year, the 2019-2020 school year, SAPHS has spent $37,460 of federal special education funds for our students. We've allocated $30,000 more state dollars for resources to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our students. These funds have already been allotted and included in our end-of-the-year finance projection. SAPH now has a fully certified special education teacher on staff. The students will receive instructional services daily, specifically according to their IEP and their placements. Compensatory services will be delivered and continued to support our students' needs. As I mentioned earlier, Progressive Therapy is providing compensatory and regular related services. They provide compensatory services after school on Wednesdays from 2:40 to 3:40, and they provide regular services that are prescribed in our students' IEPs on Fridays. They also have someone coming out for our student who receives OT services for compensatory and related services according to his IEP.
I stand to speak on behalf of some corrected financial barriers that we have had at Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School. At the charter authorizing panel meeting in December, there were several items discussed. Some of those items were a lack of budget for professional development, lack of budgeted workers' compensation insurance, and our food services agreement. We have addressed these issues and they are all currently addressed in the current budget. We acknowledge that we were not in a very good place fiscally last semester. One of the reasons for that is we were operating a school with 100+ students and we only had foundational funds for 78 students. Our meal cost was more than a single site charter could manage and keep all of its employees. Our financial services did not code several items correctly, and we missed various federal reimbursement opportunities. Simply put, we would need to make some major corrections if we were going to survive. However, we have done that. We had to correct the number of meals we were ordering to properly accommodate the number of students that we serve daily. We had to get individuals trained in submitting child nutrition claims properly so that we could maximize the reimbursements that we would receive. And we switched financial companies to APSRC in December. These moves were critical because now we have a budget in place that will have us not only end the school year in the positive, but we also have a plan in place to proceed beyond that. The 2020 to 2021 financial improvements. We are extremely thankful to the Pine Bluff School District and Chartwell Food Services for providing meals for our students. When I arrived in July of 2019, I made several calls to various food service providers. Due to the size of our enrollment, we were declined by various food providers. If a company decided that they would work with us, they refused when they realized that the reimbursement paperwork had not been submitted during the 2018-2019 school year. Thankfully, there was an agreement created during the 2018-2019 school year that allowed us to receive meals for our students with Pine Bluff School District and Tribwells. However, a single-site charter simply cannot sustain long-term viability paying such large amounts for food services. I reached out to the several food service companies and found one that services another charter school in Pine Bluff and discovered that there are other options available for the 2020-2021 school year. Having our child nutrition reimbursement documentation submitted in March and using a company that does not require additional overhead will save Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School approximately $70,000 next school year. That is a huge adjustment for the good of the students. Again, we see necessary adjustments needed and we make them. Child nutrition is a vital part of our financial future. It is imperative that we operate as effectively as possible so that we can do what's best for our students and receive meals as well as the school can afford the services. I will be submitting the proper documentation in March so that we can maximize our reimbursements in child nutrition. This wasn't previously done, so we missed out on an opportunity to save $70,000. One of the best financial improvements we made was to switch to APSRC. We began to work with APSRC in December and immediately found $40,000 in coding issues. Because of those reimbursements, we can proudly say that we do not have any outstanding invoices at this time. We were only receiving foundational funding from August to mid-December. With APSRC on our team, we have made proper adjustments to sustain long-term viability. We received $40,000 under APSRC's watch, and that is something that we are very thankful for. Some of the short-term financial options are we adjusted to lunch spending. We were initially getting about 115 meals for our students every day. And when we looked at the data that we were having, we only had about 80 to 85 students that would eat every day. So we reduced the number of meals that we purchased daily. Also, we maximize child nutrition by ensuring that every student ate. And we also made sure that we switched to a more productive financial team. One of the goals at Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School is not simply to be just another high school in Jefferson County. We acknowledge and appreciate the work that the public school districts are doing. We want to provide an educational alternative. All students cannot thrive in a public school setting. Some students require a smaller and more personal atmosphere. With this in mind, Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School looks to continue correcting issues that are present. We have a small staff at Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School. This allows for our teachers to truly gain a relationship with each student, and for the students to truly get to know their instructors. A school having 66% of its scholars to perform below grade level on the ACT, Aspire, presents a huge problem. Truth of the matter is that low literacy scores have been prominent in Pine Bluff, Arkansas for far too long. Just like with finances, special education, child nutrition, and our students' mental health, when we see a problem, we aim for a solution. Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School is bigger than simply just another charter school. Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School has signed up to be a part of the solution in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. As an educator, when I see former students that have graduated high school all of the time, some of them have gone out to do tremendous things, some are flourishing in life, and some are having a difficult time. Truth of the matter is that we as educators must do a better job in preparing all of them for life after high school. It should affect each and every one of us when we see a former student and they are not doing well. Most of the time when we see these students, we had data that showed that they did not perform well. They hadn't been performing well since elementary. We also have data to show that he or she has not performed well on any standardized tests at elementary school. We know that his or her family history does not project them to enter college. So what can we do to solve these problems? How can we decrease the number of former students that are walking the streets of Pine Bluff, Arkansas without a vision for their lives? How can we change the course of a student's future? How can we get students to become interested in performing well in high school? Truth of the matter is, for the majority of the students that didn't perform well in high school are currently adults that are not performing well in life. Some are being blocked by certain assessments to either enter college, apply for a job, or even move up the professional ladder. We at Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School have acknowledged that this is a huge problem in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. We accept this fact, and we also accept the fact that this is not only a Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School problem, but it is a problem that impacts all of Pine Bluff. For this reason, we are actively recruiting people to become part of the solution. We have begun to lay a foundation for partnership with Southeast Arkansas College set to begin in 2020 and 2021. Back in September of 2019, I personally met with President Stephen Bloomberg. Our discussion began formally at first, however, we both realized that we have a passion for solving problems. We began to talk about Pine Bluff and what it is, what it was, and what it can be through hard work. Prior to me meeting with President Bloomberg, I had the pleasure of working with Mr. Scott Kudenkooler, who was actually here today, through an internship with one of our students. Mr. Kudenkooler and I began to dream about possibilities in solving problems in Pine Bluff, Arkansas through education. The work that we are doing is not rooted in growing a campus, but it is rooted in doing what is right for each and every student. We didn't stop there when we were trying to fix the problem, when we are trying to fix the problems of Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School. We also are in talks with the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. As a graduate of UAPB, I was able to reach out and make some connections with them as well. We are also partnering with UAPB for internships and potentially developing a reading structure along with SEARC. We realize that the student achievement impacts us all. These are simply the first steps in correcting the issues. Mr. Kudenkooler and I have began to work on a dual enrollment program with SEARC. We want to eliminate the fear of going into college by creating a bridge while the students are in high school. Scholars in progressive districts graduate all the time with associate's degrees, general studies degrees, and various trades. Why can't the students of Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School do the same? We're not looking to do this for only our advanced students. The goal is for 100% of our higher grade level students to begin to dually enroll beginning next year. We want our students to gain an advantage while being at Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School. Mr. Kudenkooler and I are working to ensure that we implement a reading focus into all criteria. We realize that our students still must improve in reading to be able to successfully move forward. Between creating a higher focus on reading at the school and making reading a priority on a college campus, we're going to decrease the deficit areas. The mission is to be a part of the solution at Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School. Everyone must change for the good of the students. This year, we spent we began the school year with approximately $69,000 in the bank. We increased from 75 students in August to 107 students in the beginning of July. We didn't receive any facilities funding due to our 2018-2019 ESSA score. We didn't receive any reimbursements from July to mid-December. And in addition to that, we were overstaffed with the amount of students that we had. In spite of all of this, our enrollment increased, our student perception survey was positive, our influence in the community increased, and reading and test-taking skills are our priority. Our foundational funding will increase from 83 to 106 students because of the enrollment increase we experienced this year. This is huge for us because we also project to have a food services company that is more suitable for a school our size. By switching food services, we stand to save approximately $70,000 from that move alone. The partnership with SEARC could also create a lack of need for additional staffing. We could reduce staff size by implementing a dual enrollment program. Beginning next year, we will have a full-time reading specialist on site. This person will teach a reading course, collaborate with teachers, disaggregate data, and work with SEARC as well as UAPB to develop and implement the best programs for SAPHS. We will also better structure the staff in an effort to do what is best for our students. Many have asked, why should SAPHS have the opportunity to remain in operation? The first thing I always tell them is the student body. Our students and parents have been under the threat of closure since November. And every single one of them make a conscious decision to drive out to that school every single day. We don't have transportation. So the parents wake up every morning to drive their students to school every single day. Simply put, the students and the parents are worth fighting for. If that wasn't enough, the community has spoken. They have shown a tremendous outpouring for the school and they want to see it continue. The numerous partnerships and MOUs we have in place are groundbreaking. We are prepared to truly fix the problem of low reading scores in Pine Bluff, Arkansas through true educational teamwork. Our students will have the opportunity to be a part of the change in Pine Bluff. We have the opportunity to create leaders of tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay. Do y'all have any questions before the department presents their link? Anyone on the phone have any questions?
I'm a parent and I would like an opportunity to speak, if allowed, please.
There will be an opportunity to speak after the presentations.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
This is Tad. At some point, I'd like to hear from the people at APSRC about the financial issues. I don't know if it would be appropriate to do that now or wait until after the staff has given their presentation.
Can you? You're going to have to say it again, Chad. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I'd like to hear at some point from the APSRC financial folks about the financial issues. I don't know if it's appropriate to do that now or if we should wait until after the staff has given their presentation, but I would like to hear that at some point.
Okay, I understand. It's my understanding that the department will speak now, and then if there are others to do presentations, will that work for you?
That's great, thank you.
Ms. Hyatt, do you have a direction for me?
Mary Claire Hyatt with the division. So the board asked the division to prepare some information. I'm prepared to give that presentation. You're also welcome to hear from APSRC prior to that or after. It's up to the pleasure of the chair.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have a preference? Okay, then let's hear from APSRC at Mr. Peck Run's request, and then we will hear from the department.
That's okay. If the department's ready, we can hear from them first.
Well, I think we've decided the other way around because Ms. Hyatt is.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
That's fine.
Ken Rich, Director of Finance Services, Arkansas Public School Resource Center. And we just started working with this school about a month ago. And we have a strong finance team at APSRC. and we work with a lot of schools. We see a lot of different types of situations. Granted, this is not one of the best situations that I've seen in a while, but it may not be one of the worst I've seen as well. And we are working diligently with the school to make changes to make sure they can continue through this school year. Our projection at this time is they would end the school year somewhere around the $40,000 mark. Projections are what they are. They're projections. We do our best to make sure that we try to put in every bit of information that we can to ensure that we have a good budget. As you know, when you create a budget yourself, sometimes there are unseen circumstances. Based on all the facts we know at this time, everything that we've looked at, we do believe that we're confident they can finish the school year with a positive balance. I know sometimes you can pull a cash number and it looks pretty low. I've been in the business for a long time. In education, I got paid one time a month. If you look at my checking account the day after the check goes in the bank, it can look pretty good. You pay all your bills by the end of the month, you pull that on the end of the month, it could be a little bit lower than what you want it to look like. But what we do is we take a good look at all expenditures and all revenue and try to make a very solid projection. We think we've made that, based on all the facts that we know, as good as we possibly can. We're working through the compensatory issues. We do have some of that in our budget. May have to revise that just slightly, but if we do, there's places we can take, some dollars away as well. A lot of the things that Mr. Seegers was speaking to, and we're working closely with him, and let me say this, in order to obtain a positive financial balance at the end of the year, we'll have to work very closely with the school. We'll have to make sure the spending is supervised very closely, and that adjustments are made over the next few months as well. So we'll do that. And we've been working very closely with the school board, take a look at a couple of issues. They were pursuing some grant funding. A lot of that was kind of on hold based upon the charter panel's decision. So there's a possibility that they would be approved for some grants if they go forward. And then also having some conversations with school leaders regarding possible partnerships with charter CMOs that could come in and provide some resources as well.
When you all were working with their finances, were you also looking at paying the things that are in arrears, like the teacher retirement and the unemployment insurance, those kinds of things?
Yep. So at this point, that amount that you saw in the report from the department on teacher retirement, at this point, all they owe is $339 for a late payment. That's been taken care of. And according to our staff, then all invoices are current at this time. And they have the insurance that you asked about, the unemployment insurance as well.
Ms. Newton?
You said you'd looked at some of the compensatory funds and kind of figured that in. How much of the $30,000 had you figured into this projected budget?
Well, we actually had $36,000 projected for some of those costs, but some of them were for regular special education costs as well. So I would have to go back and actually take a closer look at that, but we'll be close to that $30,000.
Okay. And the other thing is, I know they had some unallowable expenditures last year and then some this year on, I think Title I and Title VI, that some may have to be paid back. Is that in your projections at all?
Some of those have been taken care of in the past. Some of those were actually corrected in the fall that you saw on the report. But we'll be working with the department and making sure that we, if anything does have to be paid back, then we make adjustments elsewhere in the budget.
So that wasn't included in your projections of the ending
No.
positive?
No.
Okay.
Anybody on the phone
this is
have
Chad.
questions?
Yeah, this is Chad. When you looked at I know you said at the end of the year you expect to be in the black. Have you done a month-to-month or a payroll-to-payroll analysis to make sure that each intervening period there will be sufficient funds?
Sufficient funds for payroll at the end of each month?
Yes, we did. They have a payroll twice a month. It's around $22,000, and we will be able to make those going forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Williamson? Ms. McFedridge, either of you have questions at this point? We will come back to this later.
I'm fine right now.
Okay. Dr. Moore? Christine? Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Hyatt?
Mary Claire Hyatt with the division. So what I will do is I've put together kind of the facts from each of the individual units within the division. I'll go over them at any time if you have questions. If you'll stop me, I can get the content area person to come up and help answer. So just to start with academics, and some of the information that's in this presentation, Mr. Seegers has already covered in his. This information is related to academics, so the letter grade for this past school year was a letter grade of F. The charter authorizing panel looked a lot at this number of 65.91% of students in need of support in reading.
Okay, you want to stop that just a second? I have a question here. When a school is in their first year and 35% is typically at the high school based on growth, how is that ESSA score figured? Ms. Kaufman, I guess. Sorry, we're not holding your time. We'll give it back to you.
Deborah Kaufman, Public School Accountability. Ask your question again.
Okay, this school was in its first year last year. When you figured their, quote, growth score, they didn't have anything from which to, as a foundation. So how does their grade get figured when there is no growth score because they weren't in existence?
Okay, so growth score is calculated by the student. And so the school received their ESSA index score last year for the completion of that school year and then received the letter grade that they earned. But to determine growth, it's based on the individual students. And if those students have been Arkansas students.
Okay, so they could have been students in other districts, okay.
Sure. We have the history of students, and so that's the beauty of our accountability system is because it's student-focused.
Student-focused, okay, yes, okay. I should have known that, but I do appreciate you. All right, Ms. Hyatt, go.
Okay. The ESSA school index score for the last school year is 48.95. Just for some comparison, the state average is 66.48. The district support plan for districts that are receiving directed support as a result of their percentage in reading or another area was due on November 1st by the school district and has not been submitted. This is required not only by Arkansas law, but also by the standards for accreditation. Because Southeast Arkansas Prep is receiving directed support for their percent of students in need of support in reading, for all schools receiving directed support, the division organized regional meetings to provide assistance with the district support plan. There was one meeting that was specifically set up for charter schools. Southeast Arkansas Prep didn't attend that meeting. Consequently, the division arranged for them to attend another meeting that was at an educational service co-op. We were informed they would attend, but no representative from the school attended the training. After the notification for CAP review, but before the review, the district did arrange to have a one-on-one meeting and receive the support for the district support plan on December 12th, but we still haven't received the district support plan. Moving on into kind of the standard system, one thing I want to note before I start talking about these is that the standards for accreditation system allows districts to have real-time access to issues with the standards so they can begin corrective action immediately. So in November of 2019, when the charter authorizer made the decision to review, Southeast Arkansas Prep had 10 exceptions, 10 standards were flagging. That included things about missing course offerings, class size, teaching load, having the student handbook posted. By the review in December, they had cleared all of those exceptions, so they had done their corrective action, but they had 2 new standards exceptions, both for background checks for employees of the school. As of, I can't remember the date today, I think the 23rd was yesterday, they have 2 standards exceptions. They've cleared the background checks exceptions, but have 2 new, one for failure to submit accurate and timely reports, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and then also the failure to submit the district support plan, which we just talked about. So, and kind of throughout the presentation, up until just about an hour before the meeting started, I was getting new information from some of the units, so I'll try and update this with the most recent information. A review of Triand and of eSchool showed that only one student, this says no senior, but there's actually one senior that is on track to graduate. All of the other seniors, so 20 out of 21 seniors are not on track to graduate on time. Every senior except the one is missing CPR instruction, 2 are missing personal finance, 7 missing digital learning credit, 16 have not passed the civics exam, and every senior except for 1 is missing at least 1 academic credit in addition to these things needed to graduate. Moving on to special education. At the charter authorizing panel hearing, there were 11 students identified as in need of special education and related services. This number was based on the Cycle 4 reporting. During the corrections window for that, Southeast Arkansas Prep updated the number to 20 students. So that's the number that they'll have to provide compensatory education to. No special education services were provided for the entire last school year. Although they did have a teacher that was hired to provide special education, that teacher was not certified as a special ed teacher, nor were they registered as a long-term substitute teacher. And then this school year, no services were provided until October. So the time period for compensatory education is all of last year and then the beginning of this school year. Yes,
May I
ma'am.
ask a question on that? So last year was the first year of the school, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How was that not caught at that point in time?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
How was that not caught at that point in time, that those services weren't being given?
So let me ask Matt or Lisa from special ed to come up.
Matt Sewell, Director of Special Education, Division of Elementary and Secondary Education. That may be a question better for standards to answer, standards or licensure, than for me to answer.
Okay, are we here talking about students? The 20 students we know have IEPs on file with the school, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and they weren't receiving speech
Yes, last year they had
OT or
17
any-
students on their 18-19 child count who were identified as special ed, and currently this year for their December 1 child count is 20.
Okay, and were they receiving additional funding for these special ed students?
They were receiving 6B funding for those students, yes.
And how is that funding being spent?
It was being spent on salary and benefits and related services for the individual that they had employed who was not certified. And now for the related services, that was for a therapy company.
Okay, and was that therapy company actually working in the school?
Yes,
Okay, so students were receiving some services?
yes.
Just not by certified
Just not their
teacher?
educational services by a certified teacher.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Well, while he's here, can I ask a question? On the compensatory ed, I know, he said that they were providing it after school. What options are there for the compensatory, say a student at this age level might not be able to stay after school because of job situations or different things going on? So what are options for compensatory?
Well, with compensatory ed, it's pretty broad, and it's up to the district to work with the students individually, with the students and families, and those can be offered after school, weekends, during school breaks, and so that would be up for the district to work with that family individually and determine when that student could come, and for them to provide those services.
Okay, so it has to be sometime that is not clocked during a regular school day.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
it could be after or other times during the year.
Yep, that would be correct.
Okay.
Did you want someone from standards to come up?
So Stacy Smith Learning Services, they didn't turn in a long-term subform, so that was where we would have caught that they had a special. First year, generally, we provide technical assistance for special education, and the second year is when we go in and actually provide an audit, and we're looking at their files.
Okay, and that makes sense. I think to me, at first it sounded like nothing was being done. It was
Right.
that they had someone who thought was doing those services.
In the
but they
initial
weren't,
technical
in fact,
assistance
licensed.
visit, I believe that was conducted by Yvonne Green, when she went on site early in the year. It was this. This is our person, but as far as us coming back and verifying paperwork that they had turned in their form, that was not done.
Okay, but that makes sense that you all have that check in place, but also what the school's perspective of what was going on. So thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
There's someone standing behind you.
Okay. So just to talk a little bit more about compensatory education, they are, as Mr. Cedar said, providing the compensatory education now. I got that information late last night, so this presentation has a little bit of incorrect information in it, and it has been verified that the compensatory education that's being offered is differentiated for the students and individualized as required by IDEA. One remaining concern is that lack of educational services can cause regression or lack of progress for these students, which may mean that they have to provide extended school year services to these students or add additional services to their IEPs for the rest of the year or for next school year, which would incur additional cost. So all of the federal special education dollars for this school year, the 6B funds that Mr. Sewell just mentioned, have been exhausted. They had $33,857.04 for this year. They've spent $37,460.58, so they're over $3,603.54 for this school year. According to the budget information we have, they didn't budget any state dollars for special education services and estimate the cost of compensatory education at around $30,000. Okay, kind of a leeway into the finance. They will receive student growth funding at the end of the month based on an enrollment of 117 students. We know that this enrollment count is incorrect because there was some duplicate enrollment. And when the division went out to do an in-person student count, the student count was 97 students. Now, of course, there could be students that were absent, but there were also students that were duplicately enrolled. The duplicate enrollment audit was due December 20th, 2019. It was submitted after the office closed last night, so we do have that as of the 23rd of January. That duplicate enrollment can impact student growth funding by reducing the amount if the enrollment count that the student growth funding is based on is incorrect and it's actually less students, they'll get less money in the future for future payments.
Do you have an estimate of how much it might be reduced by?
Let me ask someone from finance.
Cindy?
Excuse me. Alita, could you repeat that question?
I was wondering how much the growth funding might be reduced by because of the duplicate enrollment.
It would
Okay.
depend, Cindy Smith, Department of Education, Fiscal Services. It's gonna depend on how many students were duplicate, and so it would be the $68.99 that we give them per student for the growth. So however many students were duplicated, then we would just have to back that off.
So it's almost $7,000 per student that is duplicated, we will already reduced. So the most it would be 20 students. Is that kind of what we're looking at?
Is that what we're looking at now?
Or
So I do think they have more than 97 students. I think when they went and did the student count in person, there were some students that were absent due to illness, and it wasn't a duplicate enrollment situation. So the most I think would be 20, but I'm sure it's not. I'm sure that's an over.
well, you said you got the report yesterday. Do you have that number?
I don't. Mr. Rogers, do you have it yet? No, ma'am.
Okay.
I believe it was received after the office was closed, so they were, didn't have a chance to look at it last night. Okay. As Mr. Seeger said in his presentation, there are some issues with things not being budgeted for incurred expenses for employee professional development, workers' compensation, food services, and classroom supplies. According to the information we have, they still have an outstanding invoice due to the Pine Bluff School District for food services for $16,642 for food provided in October and November. At the CAP hearing, they had outstanding invoices over $30,000, but they have made payments on that. They will also additional money for food services provided in December and January, which our finance team estimates around $15,000. They also, at the last time we checked with the Arkansas Teacher Retirement System, owed over $6,000. And we were told that because they have been submitting payments late and information late, there were penalties and interest that would be billed once the payment was received. When APSRC got up, I believe they said this has been paid, and now they only have the penalties and fees associated with the late payments left to pay. There are unallowable expenditures in Title I and Title VI. So the federal Title I budget that was submitted does not match the actual expenditures of the school, and they have unallowable expenditures that include part of the superintendent's salary, janitorial services, energy bills, lawn services, and phone bills for a total of $11,826.94. So that will have to be reallocated to the operating budget. They also have unallowable Title VI-B expenses, which are the special ed expenses. So $14,511.90 was spent on salary and benefits this year for a non-special education employee. So that will also have to be reallocated to the operating budget for this year. Last year, they spent federal 6B dollars on unallowable salary and benefits for the teacher who is not certified. We're still looking into the process of how those funds will either have to be repaid or reallocated. When I spoke with special education, typically it wasn't, they hadn't done one that was this much or this big, so they're trying to figure out how they're going to have to do that. So it could be that they have to be reallocated this school year. It could be that they have to be repaid. All of the unallowable expenditures for this year, which is the $11,000 and the $14,000, will have to be reallocated to the operating budget, which will impact their year-end balance. So the division's finance team projects a negative year-end balance of negative $3,414. This number doesn't take into consideration the compensatory education, which is estimated at around $30,000, or the $26,338.84 of unallowable expenditures. Those numbers together are about $56,338.84. So if the compensatory education is $30,000, then you would see this number increase in the negative by over $56,000. Even though that number, the $3,000, is not a huge negative year-end balance, there are some other issues with the bank balance. So the bank balance was $10,000 or almost $11,000 as of January 15th. Before they're going to receive student growth money and other foundation funds and categorical funds from the division, they will have payroll of over $22,000, and adding that with the additional expenses of bills, it totals over $70,000 of expenses in January prior to the allocation of funds. There are a couple of concerning financial practices. The first is that the school seems to be processing reports in e-finance to show that bills have been paid and checks have been cut, but it's not sending those payments until they have the funding in the bank to cover the cost of the check. Additionally, some of their contracts that we've recently received don't include the language that's required in all charter contracts that no debt of the charter school becomes a debt of the state. And lastly, and notices are going out today and yesterday, the superintendent has not completed Tier 1 training, so he'll have until March 1st to remedy that, or else it will be a standards violation and the state will have to withhold funds. And then the last piece to talk about is just communication. So all divisions, now that we're a division, have had report having trouble communicating with Southeast Arkansas Prep and having to request information several times before receiving it. Some of the divisions keep a log of every time that they reach out. So between nutrition and finance, between September and December before the charter authorizing meeting, there were 41 communications by phone or email in an attempt to get information from Southeast Arkansas Prep. Finance made 4 attempts to obtain the duplicate enrollment audit information, which was just turned in last night. On several occasions, the charter unit, the legal unit, and other units have reported attempting to call the school on days when school's in session and getting no answer at the office or at the school. And there are still missing reports. So the annual financial report maintenance of effort data was due to the special education unit on October 1st. It has not been submitted. State and local budget information was due to the special education unit on October 1st, but also has not been submitted. And the special education unit has made at least 4 attempts since October 1st to get this information from the district. There are also missed reports in equity. The first is the federally required certification regarding constitutionally protected prayer. It was due September 15th. The Equity Assistance Center reached out several times to try and get the information, and it finally was submitted on November 25th after the federal deadline. So we have a state deadline to get it in so we can compile the information and give it to the feds, which has a separate deadline, and it was past the federal deadline. Still, they have not turned in the federally required recruitment and retention plan for minority teachers and administrators. That report was due to the Equity Assistance Center on October 15th. Both the Equity Assistance Center and the charter unit have reached out multiple times to the district about this report, but it still has not been turned in. And I believe that is it, unless you have any questions.
Does anyone on the phone have any questions of Ms. Hyatt?
Well, I have a question. Ms. Hyatt, you may know the answer to this. Gina sent some financial information just as the meeting was about to start. Who prepared this? I guess it's actual to projected budget. Is this something the department did, or is this something we got from the school?
Just a second. She didn't have it, so it was given to us first by Ms. Webb, and then it was given to us again by the school, but I do not know who prepared it, and she's reviewing it now.
I believe this that you just handed me, this is what's been prepared by the school.
Okay.
This is their projected bank balance or budget. This is different than what the division's finance team has projected. As I stated, they project at least negative $3,000, but if you add in the additional $56,000, that would increase the negative bank balance.
Mr. Rogers, do you have something else you want to add to that information? Okay. Did you get your answer, Mr. Williamson?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
My next question is, what does the APSRC have to say?
Okay. APSRC, you've been beckoned.
Ken Rich, Director of Finance Services, APSRC. As I said before, obviously the school has several issues that we're working through, and we started that within the last month. We asked for a meeting with the Department of Education finance team this last week, and we did meet with the finance team to go over the budget, see if we could clarify some of the issues and agree upon some of these issues. And we had a good meeting with them. We didn't agree on all the projections. I do believe that's the only group that's reached out to us at APSRC. We did talk to the finance team, but I don't think we've talked with any of the other divisions as well. Just thought I'd bring that up. Just a couple of things I want to note. It says that growth funding was based on 117 students. Growth funding in Arkansas is based on your first quarter average daily membership. The first quarter average daily membership is 106 students. So growth funding is based on 106 students going forward. I mean, that's what our projections are made on. They're not made on an inflated one of 117. Ours are made on 106. As for the number of students that were concurrently enrolled, the report was late, shouldn't have been late, the report was late. My understanding is there are 11 students in question. 3 of those students, is my understanding, actually on the duplicate enrollment were enrolled at another school. 8 of those were enrolled at Southeast Prep. It's not $6,899 for those students in the growth funding the way it works. Growth funding is based upon each quarter, so it's 1/4 of the $6,899. So it's $1,725 per student that would be at play for these number of students. It's also based on the average daily membership, which is, it could have been the student was duplicately enrolled for 2 days. It could have been for 45. I really don't know because I haven't seen those numbers. So based on what I know, at the most, that would be around $5,000.
Thank you, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll just go through a few of the others. And as I said before, we've been working with this school for about a month. We've made a lot of changes and a lot of improvements. There are a lot of things in the past on this report that I can't really speak to. But the food service bill is due at the end of the month to Pine Bluff School District. Not to criticize the Pine Bluff School District, but the school didn't receive some invoices for those services as well. So my understanding is the $16,000 for food service is due at the end of the month, and that will be paid. I've already mentioned the teacher retirement system. Obviously, there were in the past some services paid for that were not allowable in some of those special fund categories, and those will have to be addressed. I'm not certain about how that works on some of the payback, but we'll work closely with the Department of Education on that. And also, it is possible that some of those expenses could be reallocated to current expenses. So it might not necessarily have to come out of operating fund to pay for those. Could be reallocated to other special fund purchases. The department's projection, I believe initially when they talked to the charter panel, was like a year-end balance of like a negative $70,000, and there was no way the school could have a positive balance by the end of December. Obviously, the school did have a positive balance, and the projections changed a few times, and I understand that because our projection changed too. Our projection was higher, and it's become lower. So there's all kinds of issues there with projections, as I mentioned before. But the payroll is not due before the state funds come in. State funds will be paid out next week. Foundation funding, growth funding, payroll is the last day of the month. So shouldn't be a problem with that payroll because they will get their foundation funding prior to that. Certainly it is not my intention to try to argue with the Department of Education over issues or projections, but I just wanted to point out the research we've done and the amount of time that we've put into it. You know, there's still a couple unknowns, like I said, but we are confident that we're working as hard as we can, and we'll make adjustments needed as necessary to make sure these students can continue through the remainder of the year. We'll work with Mr. Seegers in any way in the school board to make sure that we continue to monitor the finances.
Does that give you the information you wanted, Mr. Williamson?
Yeah, it does. It does. Thank you for that.
Do either of the other members on the phone have questions? Okay, seeing that, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Ms. Newton?
I mean, my
And you may not
concern would
be-
be getting the students ready to graduate, and how does that, I know we're talking a lot about funding, but how are we going to get the 20 seniors that are not ready for graduation ready in such a short amount of time?
Okay, that's not a question for APSRC, so,
Can I ask him a question before he leaves?
yes. Okay, Ms. McFedridge, Ms. Newton has a question of the APSRC, and then we will get to your question, which is not for APSRC.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
No problem.
And you may not be able to answer this, okay? But if we were to get past today and move on toward the end of the school year, toward May, and the charter found that we don't have enough money to pay X, is there someone willing, because the state can't assume that monies, is there someone, a partnership ready to step in and say, we have a check that we will help you out with for this month?
I think Mr. Thornton, Ken Thornton, the board member for APSRC, or excuse me, for Southeast Preparatory School, was going to address that at some point today.
Okay. I didn't know if anyone else had something along that line that they could add to that. Mr. Smith, maybe?
He's coming.
Part of what we've been doing in trying to look at this situation, obviously it's not a good situation, was try and find some way to transition to a sustainable model. We have talked to charter organizations who would be interested in looking at taking over the school and working with that. We've also spoken with the board of Southeast Prep and the leadership, and they've indicated that they're acceptable to that. So those conversations are going currently right now. When and how that takes place has a lot to do with, letting the school finish the year out if it can, and then transitioning into a better arrangement. We can also speak to your questions about compensatory. We've had some people in the department, and that division has worked with our folks on that issue, and we've also spoken with Ms. Newton and other folks, Ivy Pfeffer and other folks from the department on this, so we have had some contact with them about that. So there is conversations in place to create a long-term sustainable option. With regards to the high school credit issue, all I can say about that is our understanding, we were made aware of that lately, that a lot of students came to the school behind to begin with. It is what it is as far as the time window goes. We can try and assist by providing courses, digital courses otherwise, to make sure they have credit, but a long-term sustainable plan for those kids to finish those courses, whether it's beyond this year or whatever, at a school that they want to be at, I think is the best thing that we're looking at trying to make place for that right now. But really not in a position to say that anything's final yet, because none of this is in place or anything like that, but those conversations are in place.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Moore?
Yes, I do have some questions, I think for Mr. Rich, if you don't mind.
We haven't forgotten you, Ms. McFedridge. We're just still working with APSRC.
In trying to reconcile the differences between y'all's projections and the department's projections, is y'all's projections based on any cuts over the next couple of months?
Our projections are based on what we know currently, and that was, I think a lot of the difference was in salary between our projection and the department's projection, because they based that on average of some salaries to be paid earlier in the year. Well, there's been some staff changes, and some of those employees make less money than those that were in place, and also on actual food service cost. I'm not saying that's the only two things, but we've tried to base them on as actual as we know them.
Okay, and so staff changes having already occurred or will occur?
Already occurred.
Okay. Facilities-wise, what facility do they use, and what does that funding look like?
Mr. Seegers answered that probably better. I do know they have a very, very low rent payment for a school that size. It's only like $2,500 a month.
Okay. Okay.
But it's a good facility, nice facility.
Thank you.
Ms. Dean? Okay. Ms. Newton, anything else?
Not right now.
Okay. Now then, we will address Ms. McFedridge's question. And I don't know if Ms. Webb or Ms. Kaufman who will address that. She's coming to the microphone, Ms. McPetridge. Okay, she's there. You can ask your question.
Yes, my concern is, of course, about the 20 seniors that are not ready for graduation, and how at this point will we get them ready in such a short amount of time?
Sure. So our process was one of our standard specialists used Trian transcripts to review all of the senior transcripts. I looked in eSchool to get their transcript plus their current schedule. And so we were in agreement on all of them. The difference was the one student that is ready to graduate, there's a course that could substitute, and they weren't aware of that. So there is one student that's ready to graduate. The rest of them need multiple credits. They could be completed this semester, but it would just depend on the school's plan to offer those courses.
Are we in position to help be able to offer those courses? Where's the department on that?
I think there are definitely resources that can assist in providing those courses, including APSRC offers digital courses.
Okay. Ms. Kaufman's coming to the microphone now.
So I'm going to ask Ms. Webb to give you more specifics, because I think when you see the list, that will help. So we've had a similar situation, you know, previously with another district where students were not ready to graduate. They had not met all of their requirements. It's a very concentrated effort, and certainly the school will need to speak to that. Are they prepared to take those steps? Also, you have to look at then the student's schedule to say what they already have scheduled for the day. Can they take on, and are they willing to take on whatever missing classes or missing courses to see how close they are to graduate? But if you can give a little more specifics.
One issue that was very common throughout the transcripts was students had a coding course that was counting as a math class, but they only took one semester. So they're only missing a semester, either a semester math class or another coding class. Looking at transcripts, here's one student that's a half a credit short in math, so that's the same scenario. They've had the coding class. Half a credit of math, and then one additional credit. They didn't have enough electives to satisfy the 6-hour requirement or 6-credit requirement. Some of them need several credits that may not be able to make those up before the semester's over, but there would be the summer to finish those courses, I think would be another option. Again, here's a math credit, an English credit. Okay.
And I think that is an example of a school using their student success plan or that process with kids, because if I know this student is numerous credits away from graduation, and I want to have that conversation with the student and the parent about summer school to ensure that they can still meet the graduation this year. Those are conversations you have now, or you've been having. We don't wait till May and go, oh, hey, by the way.
Ms. McPetridge, did you have additional questions?
Well, just a concern. Another concern is, and I'd maybe like to hear this explained, why are they so late in filing their reports?
Okay. Mr. Segers, do you want to come to the superintendent from the school is coming to the microphone.
Yes, ma'am. We are currently in transition. We have new staffing all over the building, and we've had 3 different office managers, first and foremost. And those office managers are responsible for a lot of different reports, and they just haven't been able to do them for various reasons. They haven't been trained properly, so we're in the process of getting that done. In terms of calling and not receiving calls, we've addressed that as well. Can I speak on the student graduation? Every semester, a student is scheduled to get 3.5 credits. In August, I'm sorry. Every semester, a student is scheduled to get 3.5 credits. In August, I went through each senior's student success plan with each of them. No, we do not have 21 students that will graduate this semester, but we do have 19. And that is firm. I've already contacted APSRC. From what I understand, a lady had an accident in terms of offering digital courses. And so we've already been in talks with that. We have CPR training planned as well. Everything that you all actually have it in your packets. There's a student success plan in there as well, the first 2 pages of the student success plan. So every senior has that. That's not new information.
Do you know if any of these students are part of that 20 students who receive special education services?
I would have to ask Ms. Branch that. 2.
I have a question when it's appropriate.
Okay, hold on just a minute. Yeah,
Sure.
2 of those students are in the special ed. So we're talking about they have to get compensatory service, they have to make up courses they haven't had, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which if you are, have a handicap to begin with and you need an IEP to begin with, that, from my experience as a special ed teacher, is not realistic. So just, you know, my 2 cents worth.
Yes,
Ms. McFettridge, do you have any additional questions?
No, not at this time, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Williamson?
Well, I mean, the school opened last year, right?
In 1819, yes.
Right, and so how did we get this far off the rails that fast? I can't get my head wrapped around this.
I know they've had 3 different superintendents. I know that doing school is harder than most people realize. And beyond that, do you have any explanation?
It's been a lot of transition. And aside from just superintendents, I'm the second principal as well. And transition inside of the building. It's been a lot of moving. Also, the area where we pull students and staff from is usually known as a poor performing area. So we are also competing against that. We're trying to make changes on a lot of different fronts.
Yeah, but I mean, that was known in the beginning. I mean, that's not a new thing that just popped up. I don't know who I'm more mad at, you guys or the department. This is just unacceptable.
Can I add in that, Mr. Williamson? I went back through our files, and we had the school appear before us last April, and we had a lot of concerns about some of the waiver requests. That was a previous superintendent and principal. Most of our questions were great questions directed around counseling services, mental health services, library services, business manager, and other things. That was after the charter authorizing panel already looked at it. But it looked like none of those questions were on finances, because that wasn't on our radar at the time. And that was, again, under different leadership. So I tried to look back at that to reconcile, you know, where we are from our perspective.
Anything else, Mr. Williamson?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Peck Run, did you have any questions while the superintendent is at the microphone?
Well, I'm not sure who is best to answer this, but my concern here, I guess, is kind of the flip side of Ms. McFettridge's question, which is, you know, we've got these students that are having trouble. I'm also equally concerned about what's going to happen to these students if we close this school right now. I can't see any of them ending up on a path to graduation if we close the school now. And you know, I'd like somebody to come up and just talk about what would happen and what the plan would actually be for those students if we were to close the school. I see us as a situation now where the only worse option than keeping this school open would be closing the school.
Ms. Hyatt has come to the microphone to respond to your question.
I will just give you some of the kind of scenarios and kind of talk through what might happen. So if you were today to uphold the decision of the charter authorizing panel and immediately revoke, then the students would have to enroll in their resident district. Most of their students are from the Pine Bluff School District. They have a few from Whitehall, a few from Watson Chapel, and a few from Dollarway. They would also have Arkansas Virtual Academy and Arkansas Connections Academy, which are open enrollment virtual charters available to them. Both of them have space. The division has checked with them, or the homeschool option. If you allow the school to continue operating until the end of the year and revoke at the end of the year, all of those options are still available. Additionally, they can apply for school choice. So the school choice application process began in January. The deadline is May 1st, but it is done on a first come, first served basis, so people are already applying. So they could use school choice to leave their resident district and go to a different school district. They also have the ability to attempt to enroll in another open enrollment charter. Now, there is not another 912 open enrollment charter in Pine Bluff, so it would be maybe Little Rock or another surrounding charter in a different area. So those are kind of the options for the students. If you do it today, revoke immediately, the options are more limited. If you wait until the end of the year, they do open up a little with school choice and open enrollment charters.
Mr. Secretary?
Can I follow?
Yeah. Well,
Can I follow up on that?
Mr. Peck Run, I want to give, since we're talking in what ifs, I want to give you a what if you didn't mention, which is worse than any of the scenarios, is that kids show up on a Monday morning and the doors are closed because they're out of money. Not by any action of us, not by any action of you, not by any action of anything other than, and I don't think anybody here from the school would say that that's a possibility, and I hope it wouldn't be. But we have to keep that in mind too, and I think when the charter panel was listening to all the data that was presented before, a lot of these things that you've heard today that has been significant progress since that charter panel hearing. There was a real concern that there could be a day that there would just be no money, no payroll, and if nobody showed up for those kids, what would they do then? So I think if we're going to talk about what ifs, that's something that can't be ignored, and it's something that we certainly didn't ignore at the department as we were going through researching this situation.
Did you have another question, Mr. Peck Run?
Well, I guess it's probably as much a comment as anything. I've seen the presentation from the department, and it's, got a lot of issues, but what I didn't really see in it, what I didn't see a lot of consideration of was the students and what the ramifications would be on the students to closing the school. And I certainly understand the commissioner's point of view. I'm hoping what I'm going to hear, what seemed to be alluded to, was that they've got a plan, some sort of a backup plan to prevent the worst case scenario, which the commissioner alluded to, from happening. And I certainly hope that's what we hear.
Okay, I think therein always lies the problem, is when adults can't get their act together, it's always kids who have to pay the price. Ms. Dean?
Well, someone from ASPRC alluded to someone in the community possibly stepping in. Might. So if anyone has any more information on that, I'd like to hear information on that, because that would be the worst scenario, is for whatever reason the children not be able to finish out the school year. So if there's someone that can speak to that, I'd like to hear.
When you come to the microphone, please identify yourself.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Ken Thornton, and I am a board member. I want to thank you all for hearing us today and for considering the things that are being shared. I also want to thank APSRC for their stepping in and for their assistance. Been very professional, very helpful to us.
Can you get a little closer
Yes,
to the
ma'am.
microphone, please? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Also, our representatives who are here today, and parents, our students, we're very grateful for all who are involved in this process. We do admit failures. There's been a huge learning curve for all of us. This is the second year. And for us as a board with an active school, there have been shortcomings. We understand that. I believe that we're a better board now than what we were before. We know the issues more clearly. We see them more clearly. I believe this is a stronger board. I have to say that I believe that we do have a very good board that has been responsive. When we have found problems, we were responsive to the problems as we were made aware of them. I would speak to the issue of finances. Our board is going to be very active and has been. We've received a couple of grants last year. We had a grant that I believe we would have received. I believe we would have received it. It was not promised, but we were in line for a grant, a substantial grant. At the time that the charter board made its decision, the grant was pulled back. I fully understood that. I supported that. We can seek grant from that source again. But we will be very active in seeking other resources to certainly see us past, if it's a $3,000 deficit, past that. So I can't make any commitments with regard to that, because I've not spoken to these individuals about this until after today, and see where we are after today. And I suppose that's all I have to say with regard to that. But okay. Our board will be very much reaching out for financial help with regard to the finances. We carry this burden. We carry this burden. And we have the students in mind also, and the school in mind. And we thank you for what you're doing today and for hearing us today. Thank you.
Was that all your questions? Okay. Anyone else? Dr. Moore?
I have some questions for Mr. Seegers, if you don't mind.
Okay, get a little closer.
Can you speak to your facility and what those facility and the cost for facility?
Yes, ma'am. We have it's a single site. It's a building with 9 to 10 classrooms in it, conference room. We also have a coliseum / gymnasium. It also houses a kitchen area, I should say, and we have a portable building with 2 classrooms in it.
How much growth can that facility accommodate if you were to grow?
The maximum comfortably would be about 150.
Okay. Staff-wise, how many staff I think we received this sheet, but how many staff do you have on right now?
At the current time, we have 12 on staff.
Okay, and how many of those are providing direct services to students?
9.
Okay, and that, can you list those, if you don't mind, what subjects that looks
Yes,
like?
we have a literacy teacher. We have 2 literacy teachers. We have a social studies teacher, a science teacher, music teacher, 2 career area teachers, and a mathematics teacher.
Okay, thank you. When we had the school, again, under previous leadership last year, they discussed counseling services and librarian services. What do those look like at this present time?
We have Reform Incorporated that comes in twice a week, and we also have the PAT Center that comes in and works with our students.
Okay. At that point in time, it sounded like there was a dean that dealt with some services. Is there still a dean? Is that structure in place, or does it look different now? Okay. Next, what about library services?
No, ma'am.
Okay. There was a discussion of some partnership with the city library. Is that something y'all have looked into or might look into?
I was unaware of that.
Okay. Next, so career technical courses, what do those courses look like, and are students given any internship opportunities with that?
We have computer science, and we also have criminal justice courses. And we do have students that intern, but they may not necessarily intern out of those courses.
Okay. Do they do, or who else does any career and college planning services for students?
We are trying to put things in place with UAPB to do that in the future, but as of right now, no, ma'am.
Okay. And then last, transportation, you said that is not something
No,
provided
ma'am.
now.
We are currently, the parents bring their students out every day.
Okay. Is there any, does Jefferson County have any public transportation options?
Yes, ma'am. From what I understand, there was an attempt to make an agreement last year, but it wasn't financially feasible to do it.
That's something I always really encourage charter schools to look at. I guess just want to hear more from you as you stepped into this role in the second year of a school. I understand there's a lot of challenges starting and running a school, and it sounds like you stepped into a lot of challenges. how do you feel that y'all are fit to address these in the months to come if you were to remain open?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, you are correct. There were a lot of challenges that were there. I do think, well, I know that we are more than prepared to continue. We have the plan in place to do so. Finances is an issue. It is an issue to be viable not only for the remainder of the year, but period. As I do know, it's a very uncomfortable feeling when you have to budget a school in terms of a household budget almost. And we have made adjustments to fix that, but it is something that needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Zook, I have a question while he's here. I have a question while he's up there.
We have one more question, or at least one more.
One of the standards violations that was mentioned was your lack of Tier 1 training. Tell me about that.
I have received Tier 1 training, well, Tier 4 training with APSRC, and I've done it in one-on-one training with Mrs., I think her last name starts with a G. I've done a lot of the trainings on my one-on-one basis. At the beginning of the school year, we had a support person who was there that quit directly before the school year, and I wasn't comfortable leaving the site at all for any reason. And so at the beginning of the school year, I did miss a lot of training so I could be on campus since I'm the only administrator.
The purpose of the different tier trainings is to equip you to handle the issues that we've dug ourselves a big hole in. And if you don't have that training, then you don't know how to deal with the issues that you're faced with today. And so I can't underestimate the importance of you, not only for the standards violation, but if you're going to continue to do any kind of a remotely job like you're faced with today, you've got to have that training.
I wholeheartedly agree.
There's no way around it. You will not be equipped to do the job unless you get those particular trainings.
Yes, ma'am. And I have been reaching out myself and trying to get trained after the initial part of the year. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Okay. Can I ask something from standards?
Sure.
Oh, you've got a question for him?
Can I ask you one more question?
Wait.
You brought up a question that I forgot to ask. It was the training and the language in the contract. Has that been addressed as far as the language in the contract about the division not being responsible? Has that been worked out?
Upon my entry, I received a template that was standard from the previous principal/superintendent.
Okay.
Today is
the people on the phone are having trouble hearing those of us who are speaking, so if we'll get real close to the microphone and speak as loud as we can.
Is this better?
That's better.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is the first I've heard of language that needs to be corrected, but I will be more than happy to work with whomever I need to work with to fix it.
Okay.
I did have a question on the revenue from last year. They're listed student fees. Do you know what those were in
Okay, wait
reference to?
just a minute. The call has been dropped.
Oh.
So we have to get our people back online. Why don't we take a 5-minute break while we're doing that?
I need a break.
that microphone down there, all the way down.
I'm trying to talk about it, I really am. I know, right? Start mad, I can't stop.
Could those of you who are on the phone give me, just say your name so I'll know that you're all back on?
Lenny Phillips Peters.
Brett Williamson.
Lenny Phillips Peters, parent.
Okay,
Kathy McFettridge.
okay. Mr. Williamson or Mr. Peck Run?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Williamson here.
Mr. Peck Run?
Peck Run here.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, good. All right, we were in the midst of some questions and some of the things that might need to be clarified. So Ms. Hyatt, would you come up and see if you can help clarify some of the,
Madam Chair, if I may, while she's coming up, one thing that I'll help clarify for the board, so that some of the differences between the projections from our finance unit and APSRC is our finance unit goes by what's in e-finance.
Right.
So I just want to make that clear. And so, and if that's different than the projections or modifications that APSRC has made, we're not going to see that. So you know, we can have those meetings and discuss it and understand where they're coming from, but you know, we still go by what's in e-finance. So there is a mechanism by which schools can, or districts and charters can modify their budgets in e-finance, and if that's something that they would choose to do, we can set that up, and that might drive those different numbers closer together. And wouldn't say that it will be 100% in agreement, but it could be closer than what, you know, the current discrepancy is now.
which is another reason getting your information in correctly and on time is critical. Ms. Hyatt?
Yes, ma'am. So there are just two kind of points of clarification. The first about the Tier 1 training. So during the break, we did just verify that the Tier 1 training has not been completed. There's only Tier 1 and Tier 2 training, so there's not a Tier 4, so I'm not exactly sure which training Mr. Cedars has completed, but that Tier 1 training is required by law in the standards and will have to be completed by March 1st in order to avoid withholding of state funds.
And how long does that training usually last?
That's a fantastic question.
Sorry. 2 months?
2 hours.
2 days, 2 hours.
2 hours. Mr. Rogers says 2 hours.
Well, if I was going to be a superintendent, it would need 2 months.
And just the second piece, kind of in response to Mr. Williamson's concerns about the division's involvement, I did want to reiterate something that I pointed out at the charter authorizing panel meeting, which is last January of 2019, it was before Mr. Cedars was there when they had the previous superintendent, the charter team, the finance team, the attorney that works with educator effectiveness, and the charter team, the finance team, the legal team, forgetting myself, met with the superintendent and 2 of the board members, including the board member that just got up and spoke, and the president of the board, not only to talk about issues with waivers, but also to talk about issues with finance, and did at that time offer assistance with finances, offer assistance with waivers, and background check information. So I want to make sure that that you know that we have attempted to do some of that stuff as far back as a year ago, and just not that we hadn't done anything.
Okay. Thank you. That helps.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Ms. Dean, you were in the process? Did it get answered?
I think it is.
Okay. If it comes to you, then let me know. Ms. Newton, anything further?
Yes, I have some questions for standards. we've heard several different standard violations today, and some of them are not timely reports, the Tier 1, and other things that are going on right now. Is it possible for those to be corrected before time's up?
Yes, ma'am. They currently have 2 standard violations that they've had adequate time to complete, but once they correct those, it will go off of the Standards for Accreditation tool. So currently that is complying with the Arkansas Educational Support and Accountability Act, which is for their district support plan that has not been submitted. And then the other one is submitting timely reports, and that's the equity teacher and administrator recruitment plan. So once those are submitted, those will turn back to green. The Tier 1 training, if that is not completed by March 1st, then that will be a citation.
So it's just a citation?
I'd want to double check that. I don't have it in front of me. It's, but I believe it's a cite.
But it's tied to funding also?
Correct.
Okay, which makes sense, because it tells you how to
right.
run school. Okay.
Let me look it up, and can I tell you in a second?
That's fine, no problem. But it is possible for those to be addressed before time's up, before the end of the year. Okay.
Ms. Kaufman?
Deborah Kaufman. Ms. Newton, I would add to that the standards for accreditation, the expectation is that schools have met the standards for accreditation all the time. Our system sets up flags to let you know if something is out of balance. And so it occurs at different timelines all throughout the school year, and it's meant to signal to the superintendent that there's something they need to investigate. And so that's why we do a lot of outreach to let people know, hey, you're late, you're late, you're late, because very quickly they can get those things corrected, and then we have those items, we turn them green in our system. But that's what that system really does. It allows a superintendent to see what's the day-to-day, what's going on in their district, and are they maintaining their accreditation all throughout the year. So we would expect that if you hired a new teacher in the middle of the year and they had to reach out and get some certifications, we would expect it to turn red. What we look for, because it tells the superintendent the date the flag is initiated and then how long that's going on. And so if they see that flag staying there, that's what we're watching for, to see, have they corrected in an appropriate amount of time, or have they inquired to reach out to see what's going on. And so it's a day-to-day look at what's going on in the system. And so some of the things will not flag yet because the date has not passed yet. But that's certainly a full list of those standards for accreditation on our website that we provide to our school districts, so they know what is expected and expected for the full year.
What would be a cutoff date that all standards have to be met by X date?
So by the end of the school year, you know, we send them a May 1st report of anything that's not been corrected, unless it's something that we see throughout the year that should have been fixed by those dates. That's where that communication comes in. That's why it's important to answer the phone and read your emails. And they're getting a monthly report from the SFA system. But on May 1st, we send a final official letter to school districts if they're out of compliance, and then we come to the state board in June to do the final standards for accreditation reports to the state.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else up here? Anything else from anyone on the phone? Okay, I have some questions, and I don't know if it'll be the superintendent or the LEA. But I know that you had identified 0 students with dyslexia or markers and 0 students receiving any type of service. Can you help me understand how that could be.
Kensal Branch, LEA, Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School. We ordered a dyslexia screening. I've began screening those students. We have 30% of our students already screened, and we have 2 students receiving dyslexia services. We still have quite a ways to go, as our reading was below level for most of our 10th graders. So we're still conducting those screenings and finding those students, placing those students.
Okay, were you on staff at the beginning of this school year?
No, ma'am. I was, I began to do consultant work September 30th, and I was hired on permanently November 15th.
Okay, then I'll ask the superintendent why these students weren't screened at the beginning of the school year.
That was a replacement that had to be done. We had someone in place that simply had nothing, no knowledge of special education. And asking her to do various things and getting her to do various things just didn't work. So she had to be let go.
What reading program curriculum do you have, and is it aligned with the state standards?
We have recently ordered Wilson Reading System, and we are using as a school HMH.
And what extra program in addition to your whole student population are you using for intervention?
We are in talks right now with Arkansas Teacher Retirement, and we're trying to just find different teachers and different programs with them as well for the academic intervention block.
So they are not getting directed, fidelity-driven, 4-in-a-group help for the dyslexia students?
We do have Tier 2 that comes from HMH, yes.
Okay. A lot of what you presented was for the 2021 school year, the projections. What I would like to hear more is what your projections are February to May of this year.
Well, we definitely are in a tight financial position. We are trying our hardest to do what is needed for the good of the students. The hardest part is behind us financially. Between July to December, again, we were only receiving funds for 78 students. And that was tough because we had a building of 100+ students. And so we had to make some adjustments because of the number of students that we had. Moving forward, we are getting student growth funding based on 106 students. And that's going to help us tremendously, as well as now we have coding issues that are being corrected. We weren't getting any reimbursements. So we weren't seeing any type of federal reimbursements once we spent money, and that was hurting us a lot. And we fixed that issue with APSRC.
Okay, and Ms. Smith, it's my understanding that the extra 9 or 10 students will bring about $5,000. Is that, am I understanding that correctly? Or Mr. Rogers, either one?
Cindy Smith, Fiscal Services. So when we have the cycle pull 3 times for the duplicate enrollment, and if those students are duplicated, that is when we pull that and look to see what that funding will be for the growth. So it's divided out between that. So, you know, you could have 106 students on that first cycle pull. Well, when you go to the next one, it might be 100 students or it might be 116, and your growth will be based on that each quarter.
Okay, and so if it were, if they had increased by 9, would they get the 5,000 all at once, or would it be divided over the next 2 quarters?
So each time we pay it out, it would be based on that growth.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Let's see if I have anything else. Anybody on the phone have any additional questions?
Well, yeah, I mean, if this is really directed toward the school, I guess, and the leadership there. If somebody owes me money, I'm going to track them down. I mean, the department tried to contact the school 41 times, and I mean, the department owed you money and you wouldn't even call them back?
I don't want to be argumentative, but I don't think that was, they attempted to reach out 41 times. I think that was 41 times we communicated with each other. I have also made several calls to child nutrition and emails have been sent as well.
Well, okay, but did you ever ask them why you weren't getting your funding?
Yes, sir. That was because of our office manager's position that is filled now. We were not receiving the funding that we were due to receive because we had not been trained in that position.
I think part of the problem that I presume is part of the problem is when this charter was approved to begin with, there was a projection of over 200 students. And you're trying to run a school with like half of that. So therefore, the budgeting and the projections were all based on twice as many students as you have. So even if you had done all the reports and you had gotten all the certification and all of the staff was, you still would be only receiving funds for half of the students that were projected in the original budget. So I think that is part of your problem, not all of it, but I think, as I see it, that's part of the problem when it comes to the finances. Okay, we have several people who have signed up to give public comment. One signed up a day ahead of time, and she had a sick child, so she has asked for permission to give public comment on the phone, which we typically don't do, but under the circumstances, I mean, we've all had children, so we understand that. And then, so do I have a motion from anyone on the board to hear public comment from her on the phone and from the others who are here in the room before we go any further?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Dean, second by Ms. Newton. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Ms. Phillips-Peters, you signed up first, so you get to speak first.
Thank you very much. My name is Lenny Phillips-Peters, and I am the parent of a high-functioning autistic student at the Southeast Arkansas Preparatory High School. My comments weren't going to be as long, but in listening to the meeting, several things come to my attention. And I want to address the board concerning how Mr. Skagers walked into this position. The present staff and faculty at the school walked into a quagmire. And they have been very, very transparent with the parents of what needed to be done, and they have worked tirelessly to get the school in a better functioning capacity. I see that they're not making excuses, but I am saying that 75% of the things that they are incurring were not of their making. They came in the door trying to get things straightened out. The first principal/superintendent was only there for a very short time. The second one was a gentleman that they hired a gentleman that had never been in a principal or superintendent capacity, ever. And when Mr. Skagers walked into this, I can't even imagine if it had been me, and I'm a medical professional, I most likely would have thrown up my hands and left. He had stayed there. He had to discharge people. He has had to rehire staff. He has had to deal with every red flag he's seen, deal with all the financial problems, not to mention to keep this away from the students so that they function in the best capacity that they can. I speak up for him, I speak up for the staff, because my son cannot function in a normal high school atmosphere. We tried that. We tried the inclusion method, and because of his autism, he was failing miserably, to the point that I was told that he would never learn enough to be able to attend college.
Okay, that bell shows your 3 minutes are up, so if you can wind up.
I will. Let me make it very short. My son, for the first time in his life, made the honor roll the first semester of school this year as a high school student. He has also, because his IEP has been correctly written and implemented, he is now playing classical piano and has decided that he would like to be a classical piano major. And this is from a child who was not supposed to be able to read and write.
Okay, thank you very much. And I appreciate you hanging on the phone for us. I hope your child health improves. Representative Flowers?
Thank you.
So I'm back. I want to thank the board for the opportunity to share my thoughts. And I was here last year in a similar circumstance, and I'm going to preface my remarks the way I did before. You know, I'm a very staunch supporter of public education. I'm not averse to charter schools, but I'm one of those folks that believes that the focus should be on providing quality education with strong certified teachers in neighborhood schools. That's what I would love to see in all of our schools. And at the same time, we have a structure now where our State Department can, through your divisions, provide charters for schools to start and provide waivers for schools that say, hey, we can do things differently and be creative and do a good job of teaching kids. That's where we are. And at the same time, we adults, whether we're the legislature providing funding or the state board, providing accountability as well as support. So we said to this charter school, okay, we see your plans, we see your budget, go for it. And it's our job to provide accountability. Now, we are the same ones that said, okay, you had your first year, you had an F, but we're gonna treat you and help you just like we're doing with our traditional schools, and we're gonna let you, we're open for a second year. And what I have seen, I don't come here lightly. I don't have people call me and I just show up and say, okay, this is what you said, so I'm gonna advocate for you. I sat down along with Representative Ferguson, and he's trying to be on his way back. We sat down with the administration, we talked to parents, we talked to kids, we've talked to the commissioner, as well as staff who have worked with them, and I believe, this is what I believe. I don't pretend to know all of the nuances that are involved with the accountability and the reporting, and clearly there are issues there. And there are issues that I have circled back with, as well as Representative Ferguson, to talk about the importance of communication. But what I've heard today is about adults on both sides providing accountability and communicating with each other. I've heard about reports, I've heard about cash flow problems that could amount to $4,000 in a deficit. And then ultimately, the issue is about the students. So my thinking is this: we are in the middle of a semester. Every parent I've heard from, every child I've heard from have talked about the commitment of the teachers first, the administrators, the safety that is felt by these students, and the improvement that many of them have experienced in the 1 year or 2 years or 1.5 years or 1 year that they've been there. I think that it would be gravely irresponsible for us to shut down this school in the middle of a semester. And what I have seen is after just 1 month of assistance, there has been vast improvement. And I'll close with this. In terms of cash flow problems, because I agree with the commissioner that you know, if there is a possibility that the doors could be shut because the school goes bankrupt, and we've seen that happen in charter schools all over the country, then we need to make sure that that doesn't happen and that we be responsible to students and parents. But one of the questions I asked was a bottom line question. What is the revenue for the school? What are the expenditures based upon actual expenses thus far this school year? And what I know for sure, based upon information that I got from the department, is that that is not likely to happen between now and June. And what is also unlikely to happen is for some of the things that we've seen in the past continue because there has been significant improvement. So I think that it is our duty as a state, the duty of the department, to provide the resources to the school for the benefit of the students so that these students can maintain the safety and the improvement. And if at the end of this semester, the adults in charge are not doing what they're supposed to do, then you won't see me here. But if they are and there's improvement, then I think that we owe it to the students to make sure that they get what they need, because I'm certain that if we shut this down now and students have to scramble and find where to go, many of them unwilling to go back from where they came, then we will be doing them a grave disservice. So I ask that you take that into consideration, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. Pat Hart.
My full name is Patricia Hart, and I'm the elusive board chair already mentioned. I've been involved with the board from the very beginning, the founding board and now the operational board. And I would like to say that I think we've probably crawled over more mountains and hills than any other board in history. So for that, we probably deserve a Purple Heart. But I tell you what I can say. We overcame really huge obstacles that we inherited from some hiccups with the first superintendent. So that became a challenge that was difficult for the second superintendent. When Mr. Seegers came on board, and I have to commend him because he has worked very hard, and there were things that were out of place and tons of moving parts that were often challenging and I'm sure almost overwhelming, but he's worked tenaciously, and as a board we appreciate that and we publicly state that. I also want to commend the other board members. We are a working board, although an inexperienced board, and so sometimes we felt a little bit blindsided by what we didn't know. Seeking training, and we've been faithful to do that as well. So I feel like we're better equipped. I think my biggest obstacle personally is to realize that we've overcome so much, and it almost seems anticlimactic to snatch away our opportunity to move forward when we've already overcome obstacles that were really huge. And we've acknowledged that. We admit our errors and our mistakes, but we also are willing to assume the mantle that will be necessary to move forward. We have incredible parental support. Representative Flowers didn't elaborate at all extensively when she and Representative Ferguson attended the parent meeting. Board members were also present there. The passion of our parents is incredible, because when you see a child who's floundered in a school where they've been bullied, where they felt overwhelmed in a large system, then come to a small system, albeit imperfect, they actually are doing better because it's a system that's more conducive to a feeling of safety, a feeling of emotional well-being, a feeling of support. So I cannot do anything less as a parent and grandparent, as a former teacher myself, than say there are some things that don't show up on the record books. There are some things you cannot put a check mark by, but they are equally important. We have community support. Some things that we have, as Pastor Ken mentioned a few moments ago, had a little bit of challenge with because of all the things that are going on, but I believe those will come back and support us again. All I ask is that not everything that's on the books be the things that are considered. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Hart. Mr. Thornton, did you want to speak again?
Again, I'm Ken Thornton, and again, thank you all so much for hearing us today and for your consideration. I know that you'll come to the conclusion that is best for all. Thank you for your time and for hearing us. I do want to say again, this board, our board, school board, there's not tension on our board. We work very well together. We support our administrator, Mr. Seegers. We feel like he's done a fantastic job with help of ARPC in the past month, in particular with them being in assistance with us in turning this around. I believe we're on our way up. I think that we truly have hit the bottom. We're on our way up, and we look forward to continuing this school year. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. I'm going to make an attempt at this, Scott. Cooten Cooler? Keaton? Was it? Only because I had heard it pronounced before.
I think we're in good afternoon time. My name is Scott Cootencooler. I'm Vice President for Student Affairs at SEARC College. We come from Pine Bluff. It has a little bit of a reputation that precedes itself in a lot of different ways, and most of the time in the news you see that it's not good. We have violence, drugs, gangs, schools, all kinds of things. But I'll tell you something. If you look a little closer in the last couple of years, it's changing. We've got the casino coming in. It's opening doors like never before. We've got Go Forward Pine Bluff that is happening. We've got actions that you all have initiated that are happening in our schools that are starting to make change. But as you know, change does not happen instantly. It doesn't happen fast. It takes time. And it's also not something that a single thing can solve. There's not a single way to help our kids get educated to get our schools to where we want to be. The charter school at SEARC Prep is an alternative way, because there are some students that in the traditional sense are not going to be able to be successful. They open that door. Thus far, we've heard everything that we could about the past year, and there's things that are there, but I also saw a lot of things where they had a problem and then the problem was solved. And it's a way that it goes forward. But I tell you, it's a finite amount of time in a day. And Mr. Seegers prioritizes those students first. I've walked those halls. I've been inside those buildings. I've had his students in our buildings. And they come first. And that's where that school is focused. And so they make a difference. One thing that we've not talked a lot about is about the future in the year. We started back in, it was August when you and I first met. And then he visited with my president in September. And then when this all started, we got a little quiet about it. But we are working to develop a program where every one of his students, when they graduate his program, will have college credit. But our goal is to actually have them walk across his stage one night and to walk across our stage the next. We've got a model in place that over the course of 3 of their 4 years, they can earn as much as an Associate of Arts degree while achieving all of the SMART core requirements, all the personal finance, all of that, because the two are pretty similar. But we also will work with students with their student success plan, so that not only do they have to go through the traditional model, but if they want to be something that's more in our technical line, our schools can work together to help that student pursue a path that's not a traditional 2 or 4 year degree. But maybe they learn to be a welder. Maybe it's a computer programming. Maybe they're taking part in our new hospitality program that's starting, or our cybersecurity program. Maybe that's where they fit. And it's when with that together we can do it. We've got a good relationship. Our proximity, they're less than a mile from one of our buildings, makes it possible for their students to take classes at their place, but we really aspire to having where their students come to us. And they're just like a college student, treated no differently than any other college student, but they have the support of SEARC Prep behind them. With the look to the future, I hope you all will consider a positive vote.
Thank you very much. Shamitrika McCree, have I butchered your name? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Good afternoon, Shamitra McCree. I have a son that is a senior this year, and I did pull him from one of the bigger districts, and he didn't flourish where he was supposed to in the bigger district. And I think that's where a lot of The parents made the decision to put them in a smaller setting where some kids do function better in a smaller setting. My son loves it. It has been a very good experience with the parents and the teachers as far as good relationship. And it's a family there. Those kids, I don't think it's fair to stop them in the middle of a year to put them somewhere that they didn't flourish in the first place. I just don't think it's fair. But to just consider them not just as a dollar sign, but as a person. Those kids have things that they're trying to do as well. It's stressful on the parents as well as the students trying to figure out what we're gonna do from day to day to just figure out as far as keeping the school open. I just think we should just consider the kids, at least wait till the end of the year. Give the ones that's already there time to go ahead and finish. Then we can start fresh from the new year. That's all I'm just saying. Just consider ones that's already there. It's stressful enough on everybody that's there. Thank you.
Ms. Davis, Kara Davis.
Hi, I'm Karen Davis. I have a senior going to the school, and I have had another student in Pine Bluff District. And if the school closes, I will not allow my child to go back to, well, this child to go back to Pine Bluff School District. I did not like having to go to the school to check on what teachers are doing instead of what my student is doing. And I moved to Georgia for about 7.5 years, and upon making the decision to come back, I was like, well, what school will she get to go to? Because I had bad experience with Pine Bluff District, and from what I have a lot of family here in Pine Bluff, so it was like, well, what school there is, gonna be good? And so the only school that came up was this school. And I have been satisfied. She's satisfied, she loves it, she's doing great. She is ready to graduate. So I don't think closing the school would be great for these kids that are really trying, and they feel at home, they love the staff. So I think it would really probably tear some of these kids apart, as far as their future is concerned, to close the school.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Is there any other list? And yes, I do have Julia Taylor on the list, but it's to speak for a topic we're not discussing now, so I'll call on Ms. Taylor when we're finished with this topic. We'll wait to see if the other people are due. Did you want to speak? I don't have your name on the list.
It should be. They had me sign up on one of the lists. It's R.S. McCullough.
Okay. I seriously don't have it, but that doesn't mean that you didn't sign a sheet somewhere, so go ahead.
Well, trust me, I did sign, and I used my own pen to do it, Madam So. Good morning. My name's R.S. McCullough. I'm the proud grandfather of 2 students at Southeast Arkansas Prep, a junior by the name of Jada and a senior by the name of Kiana. So much so a proud grandfather, and I've watched them thrive in this new environment that I didn't tell Mr. Key all of it, but I did mention to Mr. Seegers and his treasurer that I'd be probably willing to give up another pair of gator boots for the school to stay open if they're going to have a $3,000 deficit. So I'll kick in at least half of that. Hopefully that wouldn't have to happen. 3 years ago, I celebrated my 40th high school graduation. While having graduated from college and graduate school, I'm still very fond of high school graduation. I dare say I stay in touch with those folks more than I do my collegial friends. And this situation reminds me of the 60s when they talked about closing swimming pools after the Brown decision. When we were going to have to swim, when we were getting a chance to swim at the new park, their solution was to put sand in the pool. We had coaches, black and white, and counselors that took us to a board meeting and let us speak. And what we asked for at that time is, before you put the sand in the pool, let us at least swim one summer. And what I would hate for my granddaughters to have, especially my granddaughter that's a senior, is the exponential stress associated with closing the school when she's this close to the end. So I would ask, for their sake, don't put the sand in yet. let the pool stay open, let the school stay open. And whatever we can do from here to Little Rock to Pine Bluff and from statewide, I have some friends, we'll try to make certain that we work with the board, the superintendent, as well as the treasurer of the board to help them keep the school open. I'm tremendously impressed with this school. I'm normally on the other side of dealing with schools, but this is a call from the inside to the out that I've watched them. I can't be more impressed with him, with all the principals and superintendents I've come in contact working with John Walker. But I would say that with what they have done, this is a ship that shouldn't be stopped or ported at this point. With that, I thank you, and I certainly appreciate a positive vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hyatt?
And Mr. McCullough had signed up on the visitor log, so he did sign in.
Oh,
It
okay.
was just, we just didn't get him on the right piece of paper.
Well,
so.
it's confusing if you're here for the first time.
I just wanted to point that out. So he was signed up on the visitor log, not on the public comment page. There may be others that believe they were signing up for public comment, but just instead checked into the building, so you might want to check. Otherwise, there's no one else signed up.
Okay. Have we overlooked someone? Yes, ma'am?
Good morning, afternoon. My name is Tonisa Adams, and I did not sign in, but I thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm speaking on behalf of 3 of my students that go to Southeast Arkansas Prep. My daughter Lauren, I would like to say, was the graduating class of last year, who has did wonderful at Southeast Arkansas Prep with the leadership of our school staff. And I think, you know, even with all of this that we're hearing, the staff and the students gave 150%. This was new to our community. It was new to each and every one of us. But I think our goal was to be successful, giving children an opportunity to an alternative way of studying. My students came from Ridgeway Christian School, so we were used of a smaller campus. They enjoyed that. They enjoyed that one-on-one with their teachers, that gave them all of the love that they needed to nurture and to be successful, and that carried over to this Southeast Arkansas Prep. And then my daughter Kristen, she's a senior this year, and to let this school close like this, I mean, her goal and her dream is to graduate like her sister did last year. You know what I'm saying? And we realize all of the other things that came into it. We wish that we knowed about the paperwork that needed to be signed and paperwork needed to be submitted, but we don't want this to go that all these challenges that we went through the school, through the transition, that made all of this possible. And to say that, I'm saying that my students are wonderful. They're still thriving, because when you take them from a private school to a charter school, you really don't know what to expect. But I can say that this school and their curriculum stayed right on target with my children to succeed and to be able to go off to college. In fact, Lauren, I should say, after one semester, she's a sophomore at a UAPB. So she left high school last year. Now she's there because of that transition with Southeast Arkansas. I said it wrong. Southeast.
No, you did.
Yeah, I can't think of it. But the classes that she took there, because of the school system working with her to get it, made it also possible. And the internship or fellowshipping with the other businesses in the community, I mean, those things are special to our community. And I want you to say that our children are being the rabbits for the other children in our community. They're chasing that, they're thriving that, they're seeing their schoolmates, their cousins, excelling, loving school, talking about school, and want to be a part of that. And to allow that to be, you know, closed at this point in time, I think would be devastating. And I know it would be to my senior, Kristen, who's looking in a few more months to be able to walk across that high school stage. So please think about us and be really considerate. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Having known others that have signed up, do we have any more discussion from the board prior to considering motions? Anybody on the phone?
I have a motion.
I do. I have a question of the department.
I have a motion at the appropriate time.
Okay, Dr. Moore has a question.
Yes. Is there, so a charter school is a public school, but it's under law treated differently than a traditional public school. If a traditional public school faced fiscal issues, they would be placed under fiscal distress. Is there an option for this school at this point in time for charter schools to be under probation or fiscal distress, and what does that look like?
Mary Claire Hyatt with the division. So charter schools typically are not placed on fiscal distress. There is a mechanism for putting a charter school on probation. So the board can do it or the charter authorizer can do it. I don't know how successful that's been in the past, but that might be because of how the probation was set up. So if you were to decide to put the school on probation, you need to give very strict instruction on what you wanted that probation to look like. It can include support with finances. It can include support with academics, anything you want. But that is something that is open as an option.
Okay, and that could be, I mean, as limited as if it were that all finance would have to be approved by the department or that sort of thing, such as in a fiscal.
So I would want someone from finance to maybe come up and speak to that a little bit more. I'm not sure of the division's capacity to review every single financial decision that a school makes, but I'm certain that we can provide ongoing support and help to make sure, but I'm kind of treading water until Cindy gets up here.
And Greg's coming behind you.
Greg Rogers, Department of Education. So, go back to your first thing about fiscal distress. No, we've never had a charter school under fiscal distress. We don't have the same ability to do a fiscal distress with them. But to the second part of your question about the probation, if you put something on there that we could work with them, we already do that kind of with the school district in fiscal distress. When a school district, a traditional school district is in fiscal distress, they're required to submit debt payments to us. And those payments are reviewed by our finance office and then given approval before that money can be spent. We could do something similar like that with a charter school, but doing the designation of fiscal distress has its connotation on a charter school that makes it more difficult as well.
Mr. Secretary.
I would just add that we keep in mind that a charter, when we talk about a charter, that is a contract. And so under the terms of the contract, there are expectations of both parties and expectations of the school to maintain, certain fiscal levels of integrity. So I think probation on the basis of finance is an appropriate measure that can be taken. I would just also remind, as it relates to fiscal, academics, the reason that the school was asked to come and appear before the charter panel in the first place was because of its number of, or percentage of students that were in need of support in reading. So, the support on the academic side is something we are providing to all charters and districts. There's statutory language that requires us to do certain things. So as far as academics, I think we're in a good place with what levels of support we're providing to them. With the fiscal aspect, I think the school's decision to bring APSRC on board was a good decision. That's not the level of support that we could you're talking day-to-day back office type stuff that they can do that really the department shouldn't be in the business of providing. So I think that was a positive step. Yes, we are still working on projections and reconciling that. That is work that I think would continue. So I would trust their finance team to be able to review in a manner that would be similar to what we do with fiscal distress. I would caution us not to put a lot of extra layers in on, the same type of debt requests and those types of things that would come to the department for review, because that is a rather significant burden on our team that with the number of schools we have, getting that level of support. It's not that they can't handle it, but there's only so many hours in the day. I think the APSRC support that they're getting on finance and other areas is a good middle ground. And we've only seen that for a month now, but in that month, I think we can all agree that there have been improvements in their status.
Can I make some
Ms.
comments?
Newton?
Some of the things that we've talked about in the past when we see a district or in this case a charter having problems, it's not necessarily, they're having financial problems, but they're also having academic problems. It's a system problem. It's not just one thing, it's the whole system. And, if we think about the kids and throwing them, out Monday, where are they going to go? That's something that weighs heavily on my mind. But I also am thinking about this system that is broken. I mean, they need some help. And if we looked at letting the school year finish out, I'm not sure I could go past this year, even because I think they already realized they're on probation. I think, it may have been unspoken, but I think they realized that. I just don't think I could go past this year unless there was some other partnership, some other entity, something else that came alongside to help fix some of it, because almost every issue that we've talked about today goes back to management. And so if we finished out the school year, maybe have them come back in April and see, have they developed any partnerships? How are they addressing their management issues? That sort of thing. How are they addressing the whole system, not just finances, but how are they addressing, finances, academics? How are they addressing the whole piece rather than just the one that, we've got to look at the whole picture, I think.
Ms. Newton, I think that's a very good point, and I think if you look at, it's difficult. We've seen charters that have come here before that were, single entity charters that did not have the support of any other organization, and it's very difficult.
Yes.
I mean, as Ms. Newton, as Ms. Zook said earlier, running a school is hard.
Yes.
I think we learn from what we've seen come through in the past with respect to that. I think Mr. Smith, or I can't remember who said it, but alluded to maybe conversations. So I think we could accomplish what you've heard from the patrons, from the parents, from grandparents, with, as y'all are talking about probation, but with also some follow-up to come back to report on the conversations of, whether it be another charter, a larger charter entity, or whatever level of support that is. I don't think we need to dictate that,
right.
But there is, and I think legal is prepared to describe a new law that we have in place that allows charter transfers. It's legislation we haven't had in the past, but it does give some flexibilities. So you could say probation, you could say come back in March or come back in April and give the board an update on the conversations and where they are in the process. That would give some assurance to the students and to their families for the rest of this year, and give the board a chance to hear from the school, hear from APSRC, hear from the school's board on the next steps they have taken, and it would give us a chance to continue to monitor the fiscal condition of the school.
Okay.
Ms. Dean?
I think we're on the same page as far as what is best for the students, because that's our focus, is what is best for these students. And I just want to say thank you to the community, to the parents, to the board, to those community partners that have advocated so vehemently for your students. That's what makes this work,
Yes.
when there's communication. And there is advocacy just to say we want what is best for our students and what's been working for us. The fact that this community wants this school so badly speaks volumes. So I think it would be a detriment to the students to end the school, to close the school down right now. I have the same concerns though, that there's a systemic issue, but you seem to be addressing the issues with ASBRC, and you're trying to develop those community partnerships. I would encourage you to really pursue more community partnerships. Really pursue community partnerships, because the more, many hands make light work. So the more people, the more entities, the more community members you have supporting, even if it's just a little bit here and a little bit there, the more people there are to help, the easier the load is. But I do think that we should at least allow the school to continue to the end of the school year, and there needs to be, I agree with the probation, I was thinking the same thing, probation, and at some point for y'all to come back and let's reassess and let there be communication is key. I want to say that. Senator Flowers talked about that, I believe, and some other people talked about that, but that's going to be key moving forward. There's got to be communication. There's got to be communication. And that's not just from administrators, that's from the community, that's from the board. Everyone has got to work together in order to make this work. But I'm optimistic because of such outpouring from the community. We received emails, phone calls. You all had a meeting. You've got support from your legislators, so it speaks volumes. So when the time is right, I'll be voting that you all will be able to continue at least through the school year.
Okay. Dr. Moore, Mr. Secretary?
Yeah, just one thing, since you mentioned legislators. Y'all remember Representative Ferguson was here earlier. He had to leave for another meeting, but he did send along the comment that he asked if I would, and Representative Flowers would convey. Relate to the board the conversations that he has had with the kids at the preparatory school, and those students asked him specifically if he would fight for them because they can't fight for themselves and they can't vote. So I just wanted to make sure that you all heard that and the community heard what your representative, one of your representatives was saying on your behalf.
Okay, Dr. Moore?
Yes, I echo similar thoughts of appreciative of those here today. I do also echo the serious concerns for the viability of the school moving forward, and that those students would be served the best that they can. So I would also like to, whether probation or reporting or coming back with a stronger plan moving forward, I would see that any motion would only be for the remainder of this school year. Looking back, there's only been, I think, 2 or 3 charters that have been closed in the middle of the school year. At one we recently faced, we found a transition plan for those students immediately, but it's a very serious matter. The last case scenario to close in the middle of a school year. Yes. I also have gone back to look at the school's initial application, and I know some of the school leadership has changed, but the board is the same. And I would like that whenever the school does come back, that they take a hard look at that application, as that is their contract with the state. In it, there is a contingency plan for budget issues. There are some things I see in here that I'm not seeing in the school, and I think that would need to be revisited in the spring or the summer months as we move forward.
Okay, and speaking of the contract, the department has made commitment of what their availability is, what they are committed to do, not only for this school but the others. But since we are negotiating a contract here, I wonder if APSRC and the board are willing to commit today of the, to the extent that they are willing to continue to work this closely with this charter. Okay, would you come to the microphone, Mr. Smith and Mr. Thornton?
No, I appreciate the comments from the board and the position. Let me just be clear about APSRC's position. We're happy to continue to assist. We're happy to continue assisting with the commitment from the board and the school that it's about making progress to a sustainable model and transitioning to a better management system and control. So if it feels like it's not going in that direction, we would like the flexibility to report back that we're not making progress or anything like that, but we're happy to lean in as long as we're making progress, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Thornton?
Yes, ma'am. I've worked with this board for quite some time. And again, we're in agreement. And where we see that we have failed, we want to do better. And we will follow your guidance and work closely with APSRC. And I know I speak for board, Mr. Seegers, and we want to make this work. So whatever that takes, whatever that looks like, y'all let us know what you need to see from us, and we will commit to make that happen.
Well, I think the school is addressing the academics, and I guess what we're asking of you or the people in your community is that you have a commitment that the students are not going to show up one day and the doors are closed because they're out of money.
We're going to work very hard with regard to reaching out to the community for financial resources. I believe that we'll make that happen.
Ms. Zook, I think it goes further than that, though, because so many of these issues, the report's not getting in on time and different things.
Right.
We've got to have not just financial help, but we've got to have management help, or we're not going to get out of the mess that we're in right now. So I think
agree.
it's more than just academics and finances. I think we've got to have somebody that knows how to run school. Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay.
Right, and I need a commitment from the district that you understand this is it. No more excuses for late reports, no more excuses for turning in that you've paid bills that have not been paid, no more excuses for not serving your special ed students, no more, that we are at the point when you have brought your concerns to us, we have brought our concerns to you. And going forward, if you don't know what you're supposed to do or when a report is due, then you need to get on the phone on a Monday and say, do I have anything due this week? And what is it? And I don't know how to do that, but could you send somebody? So, we're at the point now where we want to think about the kids, and we want you to think about the kids too. And as Ms. Newton and Ms. Dean said, it's a systems issue. So if the adults can commit to get their act together, so we all agree that we're here for the children, and the only way that can work is if we get our act together. Mr. Peck Run, you had a motion?
Yes, I'd echo what Ms. Newton said. I think the appropriate thing to do here is to allow them to stay open to the end of the year, only because, in my opinion, the only worst thing would be turning these kids out and in the back to other schools at this late point in the year. I think they need to work very hard with APSRC and the other, at looking for a group to help them manage them in the future. So I would ask if they come back at either March or April with a plan, and at that point we would consider whether to allow them to remain open past the end of this school year.
Ms. Hyatt's going to have a question of you.
Well, before you vote on the motion, I just want to bring one thing to your attention when you're trying to decide when to call them back. If in the event that the school ceases to exist at the end of the school year, based on that review, the further you push it towards the summer, the less options the kids are going to have in terms of applying for school choice, applying for lotteries for other open enrollment schools. So I just wanted you to have that information when you're making your decision about when to call them back in.
So if we went March, this is mid-January, that would give them approximately 2 months to figure out a plan for going forth.
They could get their school choice.
Now, I'm talking about the school. That would give the school or their board 2 months to figure out, are we gonna partner with another entity? Are we gonna try to keep doing it ourselves? What is our plan for going forth if we were to be extended past the school year? So that would give them 2 months to come up with some sort of a plan.
So, Mr. Peck Run, are you saying put them on probation today with a follow-up report in March about where they are with regard to perhaps a charter management group or a plan going forward?
Well, I'm still a little unclear on what the probation would mean. All I was really looking at is saying we're not going to close you this year, and then we will meet again in March to decide whether they are permitted to remain open past this year.
Ms. Hyatt, do we need to use the word probation?
I think it would be better if you want to add a probation component to do it in a separate motion. I think what Mr. Peck Run is, and Mr. Peck Run, jump in if I'm misstating you, is trying to do is say, we move today that the school can remain open for the rest of the school year with the follow-up in March or whichever month he chooses. If you then wanted to add some probationary conditions between now and March, I think that would be better in a different motion. And I think probation can mean whatever you want it to mean. And so just to say they're on probation doesn't give us or the school any indication about how you want us to move forward. So if you do choose to use probation, it would be really helpful if you could describe those parameters in your motion so that the school and the division know how to work together.
Okay, let's see if we have a second to Mr. Peck Run's original motion. Second by Ms. Dean. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Do we have a second motion, or is that all we want to do today?
Can I clarify something just for the record? Mr. Peck Run, was your motion for March for the return hearing?
Yes, it was for March.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any other motions?
If we did probation, could it be under the condition that they cleared up the standards violations and at the, maybe March, they could show that they were going to end the year with a positive balance? Could it be something along that lines if we?
I think probation is more, you have to provide this kind of reporting to the division or to the board. You need to, the division is instructed to help you do these types of tasks. The division is instructed to help you do these types of tasks. Or you are instructed to work with the division. Rather just saying you'll have these issues cleared up by then. I think that's kind of understood.
So do we need probation? I guess that's what because they're gonna do it anyway.
Since everybody's doing it anyway, do we need it?
I think it's at the discretion of the board what you guys would like to do. I know that the division will continue working with them either way. It's just if you wanted additional reporting or additional support, that would be what would go into probation.
And also, if APSRC is going to continue to work with them, then they need to understand or be helpful in them putting the stuff into e-finance, because that's the stuff that the department, that it's my understanding has been why there's been a discretion between what you all were thinking and knowing and what they were thinking and knowing. Mr. Smith?
I guess I would ask the board to take this into consideration. We've only been involved in this since December, so I'm sure as we work with the department, we will continue to realize issues, work through issues. What I would like to do is come back to the board with a report in March about the issues as a whole, as best we can determine everything, and then any possibilities of plans at that point in stage. And that would be the requirement at this point in time. And then that would give us the flexibility of kind of knowing the issues as much as we can and whether they can be addressed by March or not. Some of them can't even be addressed by March, I suspect, because they may require later in the year to be dealt with. So if we could come back to the board with a report in March about the issues, work with the department, keep them informed along the way, and then at the March meeting decide what, if any, further action is necessary at that point in time.
and also try and present some type of plan about the possibilities of what the future could look like.
I think my frustration is they're already having trouble doing what it is they're supposed to do, and then now to have a plan and the time that will take, and, you know, I don't know the capacity. They have new people they're training, and the superintendent's still trying to learn what he's supposed to do, and,
Yeah, so in essence, what I'm trying to say is I don't know that all issues can be resolved by March, but I think we can report a plan on addressing those issues throughout this year, and a larger plan about transitioning this to a management organization that can run the school appropriately.
if they're amenable to that.
Yeah, if someone, yeah, it's going to require a third party to also be in the conversation.
Okay. So no additional motions at this time.
Can I, well,
Dr. Moore?
the secretary did go through the scenario of the school not having money to make payroll. Do we have the proper flags in place so that, because we have extended this school through the school to open throughout the rest of the school year, that the department would be known before that happens? Does that make sense?
I think that was what I was trying to address when I was saying APSRC and the department. You know, basically APSRC and the department's running the school, you know, and getting the finances in order, and APSRC and the department agreeing about the finances, because as you heard today, we had one set of numbers from APSRC which were not based on e-finance, and those from the department, the division, that were based on. So what we need to know is what's real, what's been fixed, and all of that. And unless the three entities work together, Mr. Secretary?
Well, I wouldn't characterize it as the division running the school. I think close monitoring is probably a better description of that. So, and you know, since the before the charter panel hearing, and certainly in the time since the charter panel hearing, the intensity of that monitoring has gone up and will continue. We are looking regularly at bank balances. We are looking regularly at what is input into e-finance. So that is something we will continue to do, meeting at whatever regular intervals with the finance team, APSRC, and Mr. Seegers to make sure that you know, we don't go 2 weeks or whatever period of time and something pops up. We also need to keep in mind one of the partners here is a Pine Bluff School District who has their own fiscal concerns, and we're working with them too. That's why the food service issue was such a concern for us as it related to how it would impact Pine Bluff. So, you know, I can commit to you that we will continue to provide that level of monitoring, and if we see anything that creates an urgency, there's always the option, Madam Chair, of calling you and saying, Madam Chair, we need to call a special board meeting, because it is of urgency that this is, we can't wait until March. But just know that we will be watching that very closely, and I don't anticipate it to be necessary, but know that we're going to be watching it, and if at whatever point that y'all need to be pulled in for, you know, if necessary before March, we'll do that. In the meantime, we're going to try to make sure that we're working with Mr. Seegers and the board on the reporting, the counts, the child nutrition counts, which is very important, the work and the cost of the compensatory special ed services for these students. All of those things and more that we have talked about today, we will not be backing away from our monitoring of.
And I think because we've spent so much time talking about money, because that would be the thing that shut the door, is we don't want to lose track of the students that are there, because I hear the parents and the community coming here on behalf of the students and the pleasure that they have in seeing their students thrive and go forward. So let's be sure that we don't lose sight of that. And I also want to commend the Charter Authorizing Panel because they did a very thorough job, and based on the information they had in December, the decision they made to us, I think was in keeping with what was good for kids and for the school. So I do appreciate the work that they put in and the recommendation they made, and maybe that lit a fire under some folks, so thank them. Have anything further? Any new business?
My last thing, Madam Chair, and I would not sleep tonight if I didn't say this, because all of my team knows, you all know, the difficulties we went through with Covenant Keepers.
Yes.
And I hope you all are listening. And if you don't know, the folks from Pine Bluff, if you don't know the story of Covenant Keepers, you might do a Google search on it. This can't become another Covenant Keepers. Yes, sir. I implore you, please, I implore you, anybody who's working on this, because the ripple effect of that situation is still with us today, and it's something that has gone about 3 years or so. Let's please make sure we don't turn this, this doesn't turn into another situation like that. That's
Okay, thank
all
you.
I
I
wanna say.
appreciate that comment. Okay, if there's no new business, then we have one person signed up for public comment that was not about an agenda item today. Ms. Taylor?
I'm Julia Taylor. I have no desire to see you all close this school. I appreciate that the parents came and gave their support. And yeah, I think you probably did what's best for the kids. But I want you to know that I'm a Little Rock School District parent. As you can see, probably I might have gotten to speak earlier had I not had my red shirt on. But you all know, you know in your hearts that if this were an LRSD school or any other public school in this state, it would not receive the same treatment. And again, I have no wish to change the path of what happens for them. But I want everybody watching, and I want you all to know that we know that you have two totally different agendas. You have a real problem with consistency. And that's all I have to say.
And I will comment that of all the level 5 schools, we have closed no districts. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Ms. by Ms. Dean, second by Mr. Williamson. Thank you for those of you on the phone and the people in the audience.
Thank you.